Good afternoon, Lawnards. It is April 29th. I can't believe it either. It's the afternoon of day one of evidence of the Commonwealth versus Karen Read. Opening statements were this morning. The state's theory of the case is not super clear. They did talk about statements she made to first responders. They loosely got to the fact that they believe Karen Read reversed quite rapidly somewhere after midnight, and they suspect hit victim John O'Keefe with her car. The defense opening statement was much easier to follow and raised a ton of questions about this case. So we are going to get back into court. When we left for the lunch break, the victim's youngest brother was on the stand talking about the night the victim died, his relationship with Karen Read, the defendant in this case, and the victim's girlfriend when this happened, and all of what went down the morning that the family found out that John O'Keefe had passed away, and what happened when they went back to his house, who's taking care of his niece and nephew, and the rest of it. So that's where we are resuming to court today. So, you know what we got to say?
Bring the jury.
Bring the jury. Ladies, gentlemen, humans of the Law Nerd chat, it is time to go back to court. And since we're not sitting in these hard, horrible pew-like benches in this strangely laid out court in Massachusetts, this more 1800 style layout of court in Massachusetts, we get to have snackies and water. So stay hydrated. Let me know where you're coming in from. And if you want to share what you had for lunch, I had homemade chicken salad. It was lovely. I might go get some more in a minute. We'll just see. So chat, it is time. We're going to roll the intros. We're going to go to court. Let's go to court.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
We are back in court live, just a moment behind live as this witness resumes on the witness stand. We got a little layout of the court there before we get back to questioning. Oh, and we have closed caption back. Hopefully. Where'd it go?
You testifying before the lunch and recess before.
Yay!
Indicated that Ms. Read had gone upstairs for some period of time. Is that correct?
This feels quiet to me.
At your brother's house on Meadows Ave.
Correct.
Barely hear the
And who, if anyone, had she gone upstairs with?
prosecutor.
Her father.
About how long were they upstairs for?
10, 15 minutes.
This is exactly where they left off at
And
lunch.
As far as, was there anyone else in the upstairs area of the home with them at the time that they were upstairs?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I wonder what the state wants to show with this, with Karen Read
As
went
far
upstairs to
as-
gather some of her things. Okay.
Ms. Read was concerned. What, if any, conversation did you have with her while she was at the house for that period of 30 minutes or so?
None, really.
I didn't gain it up as much.
And
I'm going
as
to turn me
far
down a
as
little.
Any other members of her family, without any reference to what it was?
Yeah, I'll
what, if
rebalance
any, sort
myself.
of substantial conversation. What, if any, conversation did you have with either her father,
What,
her
if
brother,
any?
or the brother's wife?
What if any? What if any?
Again, none, not really. I didn't really have much interaction with any of them while they were at the house.
He's talking about Karen's family members.
Now, you're obviously familiar with your brother's house on Meadows Ave, is that correct?
Yes.
And
Yeah, the
as
audio's
far as
good.
the house itself, what, if any, sort of security did your brother have installed on that house on Meadows Ave?
I wonder if they're going to
He's
admit the
got
video.
excuse me, a ring. He had a Ring doorbell, and then a Ring camera floodlight combination above the garage doors overlooking the driveway.
And when you say the doorbell, how many sort of points of, how many doors or entrances into the house were there?
Points of entry? Is that what you were looking
With
for?
cameras, I would say 2.
He didn't ask for-
The driveway and then the main front door of the house.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I don't know if they're going to try to admit video or photos of the Ring camera at this point.
if you could just look at those briefly and look up. when
But they're
you're
going to use his knowledge of this home to authenticate those.
finished. And generally speaking, sir, do you recognize what's depicted in those 3 photographs?
Yes. The first,
Before we get to them, just in general,
yes.
do you recognize those?
He's got to lay the
And what
foundation,
do you
sir.
recognize them in general terms? What do you
What are
recognize them to be photographs of?
that's my brother's house at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have Exhibit 2 up on the screen.
Let's see how the court shows us exhibits. That'll be interesting to see.
Sir, I'm going to show you approach again, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm going to hand you here as the latest.
This courtroom is going to be much more formal than what we saw in like New Mexico. The court laid out those rules and reminded the
And
attorneys.
Again, sir, what's up on the screen is Exhibit number 2. What are we looking at here?
Oh, they don't have multiple
That's my
cameras,
brother's
just
house at
one?
1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
Okay.
And as far as the Ring doorbell camera that you were referring to, is that something that's visible in this photograph?
Not in that
They like
photograph,
the
no.
front door.
And so typically when you would come over to your brother's house, what would be sort of the general point or door that you would use to go inside the house?
So either the garage door or there's a side door
Not the
right behind
front
that
door.
bush.
Oh, the laser pointer is so
behind that
helpful.
bush, is there any sort of like walkway or
cats are
anything
gonna
like
hate
that
it.
over there?
Yeah, so there's a walkway that leads up to a couple of steps and then to the entryway.
Is that where the Ring doorbell would have been located, labeled as sort of the front door?
Yes.
And the garage area with the driveway that you were referencing in relation to this photograph,
The
is
garage-
not depicted in this photograph, is that fair to say?
Correct.
I think it
So
would be
which
up there, but
sort
it
of-
could be.
With relation to this photograph, understanding.
Could be
that it's
over on
not
the other
depicted in
side.
it, where would that be?
The driveway would be to the right side of the house as we're viewing it from here.
And if I could turn your attention to the next exhibit, number 3, Ms. Gilman, if I could have that.
Exhibits. I don't know who said in the chat it's giving Home Alone, but yes.
And what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit number 3?
Cameras, floodlight, garage.
Correct.
And whereabouts in relation to the house, what are we looking at here?
So that would be the driveway, right side of the house, 2 garage doors, the upstairs window, and the Ring camera / floodlight combination.
Now, with respect to the garage, was there a particular way that your brother would have kept sort of the garage area?
Yeah, he had on the left side, he had a 1971 Ford LTD parked over that side. And he would typically park his car on the right side.
So the car that you were talking about before, that being the Chevy Traverse, is that correct?
Correct.
The daily
And so
driver.
The floodlight combination with the camera, that you see that in this photograph, is that correct?
Yes,
If you could, just using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to that.
right under the window.
And as far as these particular Ring cameras, driveway, garage one, and the front door, the sort of side.
That is the
entryway
witness
there.
breathing into the mic.
Particular Ring, who, if anyone, as far as you knew, had
So
access
there's not much
to
we can do
those
about that.
particular cameras, how would they be accessed?
Most likely through the Ring app on your cell phone. And I believe the only ones who had access to was my brother and Karen Reed.
The audio
And
went
as far
mono
as
for
your
a minute
brother-
there. I don't think that was me.
All right, I'll strike that, see if you can lay a foundation.
Oh,
As far as your brother was concerned,
they went to strike as to who had access to the Ring cameras because the defense objected. Remember, the objections the court has said need to be just objection, not the grounds, just the objection. And he was saying that Karen Reed had access to the Ring doorbells through the app, and the defense objected. And the court asked him to lay a foundation as to how he knows that Karen Reed had access to the Ring doorbell.
what, if anything, would he do with reference to those Ring cameras and his app on his phone when people would arrive at his house?
Look at it.
I mean, a few times he talked to me through the speaker. If I pulled up to the house and he wasn't home, and he would speak to me on it, but I'm not sure if I follow the entire question.
Right.
No,
He's,
and that's exactly. So there were points where you would come to the house, correct, and he wasn't there?
Yes.
and he would sort of talk to you through the ring application. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as far as Ms. Reed was concerned, when you say you believe she had access to it, what leads you to believe that?
I believe the kids had mentioned it before. Kaylee and Patrick, mostly Patrick.
Gotcha.
All right, I'm going to strike
That's
that.
hearsay.
Now, if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before you, exhibit number 4.
Well, now the jury wants to know more about her having access to the ring
And
cameras.
again, sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit 4?
Correct.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of what part of the
it's
house
hearsay.
we're looking at here, and what, if anything, in relation to the ring that you observed here.
That is also the driveway from a different view. Call it the top of the driveway looking down onto the street. Right in this picture here, the ring camera or the floodlight ring is not visible.
And
Yeah.
the walkway that you were talking about that was behind the bush, do you see that in this photograph?
Yes.
Okay, if you could direct the jury's attention to that.
I knocked over my
So
pickle.
if you follow that walkway sort of around to the bush, where does that lead?
Too many cups
Right
of
to the
water.
like breezeway door.
You can kind of see it curve around at the back there, the lighter color concrete.
Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, the ring camera that we're talking about, have you seen those on like a disc form? Is that correct?
What?
Have I seen them on a disc form? I'm not sure if I follow that question.
I don't at all. It's not your fault, sir.
Have you viewed any ring camera footage from either the front door or the driveway to your brother's house?
No, I didn't have access.
Okay. Now, you want to make a approach?
Yes.
They muted the mics very effectively. I'm going to zoom a little bit as they're at sidebar. This is why occasionally I will pause. A, sometimes I don't want to talk over, but B, there are always going to be breaks.
Exhibit. All right, so Mr. Lally, you have something to mark as an exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor. So there are 2 discs, one labeled Meadow Ave Ring Videos. Oh, sorry.
So they've already been marked.
Already been marked.
All right, so the next, go right ahead.
No. Okay.
The court is like,
So
Casey Cat, that's what we do over here. We're all doing our own thing. There's places to watch with commentary, places to watch without commentary. But if you want to watch with the law,
And let us know if you want the lights dimmed at all, Mr. Lally.
I would
yes,
love
please,
the
Your
lights. I always would
Do you
love
want
the
that
lights
now?
dimmed. It's
Yes.
the
Would
afternoon.
please? Thank you.
Can we all dim our lights? Wait, I want to dim my lights too. Can we just
Honor. Mr. Gilman, if I could
vibes?
have from what's been marked as Exhibit 6, the driveway camera.
Okay,
If I
but
could have
now that they're
video number
dimmed.
161.
I know I have a window, so it's not not that helpful.
And if you could just pause that just for a moment.
We love a dimmed courtroom.
Now, Mr.
Look at all
O'Keefe,
those windows.
what's up on the screen there? Do you generally recognize what's depicted there?
It looks like Karen Reed's vehicle, my brother's vehicle, and it looks like another SUV behind it. I don't know who the 2 people.
If you could, just using the laser pointer before you, if you could just direct the jury's attention to
My mouse doesn't
which
show up where it's
vehicle you're
supposed
talking
to.
about when you. So starting with Ms.
Karen Reed's is the
vehicle,
black one.
Where is it in this video that you?
In the
I believe it's that one right there.
the Lexus
and your brother's
GX,
vehicle,
Is back there.
the Chevy Traverse,
and the vehicle you're referring to is your vehicle. Where is it?
the 4Runner, right there.
And if you know, when about is this video depicting in relation to what you've described?
See, I
as
love
the-
some of you in the chat are like, that's a dusting of snow.
The
And in
events of
Tennessee, that is a
January 29th.
state closing amount of
I
snow.
mean, that would be
was like,
in the
oh,
morning, coming
too
back
much
from
snow.
the hospital,
Done.
mid-morning.
And as far as the people within this video, do you recognize any of the people within?
That'd be myself. I believe that behind me could be Kerry Roberts, because I believe that's Kerry Roberts' car. She
Also-
drove my father back from the hospital to One Meadows.
How's anyone telling the nature of the taillights with the way the snow's covering the back of Karen Reed's car? This video
It's
does
my
not.
mother.
Like, how can you tell? The taillights are substantially covered. It is. It is a state. That is a state closing for like a week amount of snow. Neil's in the same boat. Atlanta, we would call it a state of emergency. Yes. Snow is fun. Sometimes. Oh, there is audio. It's not very loud. What I love is that the brother popped his windshield wipers up so that they don't get stuck to the vehicle.
Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit, if I could have...
Things I didn't know when I first moved to somewhere where it snowed.
Again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause that briefly. Now, with respect to this video, do you recognize the vehicle that just pulled into the driveway here?
That looks like Karen Reed in the photo, on the video. I assume that's her father's car.
Do you
This would have
recognize
been
it?
the time
Nope.
that Ms. Reed, the defendant, arrived with her family.
Because
from
he
the
is like, I
hospital as well.
assume.
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just...
And the defense probably didn't object because that's probably accurate and they're going to cover it. I don't know what just happened to my computer. The music was not this video. I think that noise is the video. Like, it sounds windy, but it doesn't look particularly windy, but it sounds windy. Is something else going to happen? Nope.
If I could ask for the next labeled video from Exhibit 6, number 166.
I guess we're just going to see all the video. Things I didn't
Gentlemen,
know.
if I could ask you to
You
pause
lift the
there.
windshield wipers. Who
Mr.
knew?
O'Keefe, with the last video, the two individuals sort of walking over to the house, do you recognize who those were?
It appeared to be Karen Reed and her father.
And the individual who just got out of the same vehicle, do you recognize that person?
That appears to be Karen Reed's brother, Nathan.
And again, this particular day, January 29th, at your brother's house, that's the first time that you met him, is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this one again.
They are laying the foundation and admitting into evidence the video of people coming and going from the victim's home after everybody left the hospital. But you get an idea of the amount of snow. You get an idea of how the weather is, of who's coming and going.
Thank Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit number 6, if I could have video 169.
I guess we're going through all of them. That looks like a lot of exhibits. I have no idea what time this is, but I guess by the accumulation of cars, we can guess.
As far as you mentioned earlier in your testimony that after Ms. Reed arrived at the house, that your nephew Patrick came home as well?
Correct.
And do you see your nephew Patrick in this video up on the screen now?
Yes.
So this would depict when he got dropped off, essentially.
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run that, please.
That was me. I don't know if you saw it or not, but that, maybe not. I had to rearrange my windows on my computer. Silja in the chat said there's no timestamp. That's weird. Or so. Wait, did I read it wrong? I apologize if I read it wrong. But no timestamps. I don't know if that is common with Ring or not. I do not have a Ring. I have other things. But I don't know if that's common or not. For those of you asking, this is not the video from when the defense is claiming that Reed bumped into O'Keefe's car when leaving. That was early in the morning. This is after the hospital.
Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit 6, if I could have.
So this is after he's been to the hospital, after they all returned from the hospital. The witness said earlier it took 40 minutes for Karen Reed to show up after they got there.
Early in her testimony, Ms. Reed had gathered some
from the
belongings
hospital
and then had left with all of the vehicles that her family came with, correct?
Correct.
And do you recognize anyone depicted in this video number 176?
That's Karen Reed.
It's a decent driveway.
What, if anything, do you observe in this video her to have in her hand at this time?
Looks like some type of a bag.
With is that a box in it?
Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this one.
It looks like there's like a box of something in the bag. Maybe they'll tell us. Maybe they won't. Yeah, the way she was holding the handles closed looked like a box with something. Ice Baby in the chat asked a great question. Sorry, I pulled up Bluebell. Sorry, no disrespect. I wanted to get to this one. Can they just edit all the videos into one continuous video? No. They're all separate items of evidence because they were all probably downloaded separately, and that will be determined. So no, editing the videos is never a good idea if they weren't a continuous video the way they were downloaded. So, I mean, if they wanted to do it for demonstration, like demonstratives, they could. Oh, you can see the the rear window defrosting. If they wanted to do it for demonstratives later, they could. But for this, no, they're marking each one as an item of evidence.
Exhibit 6, number 178.
So, and then it's noted which item of evidence it is in that note down at the bottom. So this was earlier?
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, you were at your brother's house on Meadows Ave for a majority of that day, correct?
Yes.
Okay. About how long were you there into the evening?
Yes.
And at some point were attempts made in and around your brother's house, the driveway, the walkway, things of that nature, as far as snow removal was concerned?
At one point,
so if they're all
other than me
files,
shoveling, Patrick's friend's father came with a snowblower.
And so initially it was you shoveling. What, if anything, was your father doing while you were shoveling as well?
It was just me shoveling.
And do you recognize what's depicted up in this video as far as any individuals in this video?
I believe that is me standing there with a shovel.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this through at this point.
Carolyn asked, how is this relevant? I guess we'll find out together. There were a lot of times, particularly in the Rust case, where it wasn't until closing argument where I was like, oh, that's why they did that. They don't always tie it together midway through, which is hard to keep it all in your mind. But they have to admit all of the evidence so they can tie it together. So what are they proving with this? Don't know. What is the relevance of this? Don't know. Is it just to show the position of the cars? Maybe. Is it just to tie the timeline together? Maybe. But this is foundation of what was going on that morning. Midday, I guess, at this point. So these all have to be admitted into evidence.
Gentlemen, if you could just pause it right there.
How loud is that snowblower going to be?
To the snowblower coming out, or sort of the friend of Patrick, the father of Patrick's friends. Do you recognize anybody in this video here?
I'm assuming that's the father of Patrick's friend, but I'm not sure.
So fair to say this was later in the day after you were out there shoveling and after the defendant had left the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
well, that's helpful. Could we have done that
with
earlier?
regard
No,
to
maybe no? It's not.
With regard to that particular day of January 29th, do you recall any law enforcement, whether they be PD or state police, coming to the house while you were there that day?
Not on the 29th, no.
During the course of clearing the driveway out as far as snow or ice, what, if anything, did you observe as far as beyond just sort of snow and ice? Were there any sort of other items within the driveway that you recall seeing, or?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play this video through.
I see the chat saying laughs in Canadian as to a snowblower for this amount of snow. Fair enough. I mean, you get a little bit more of a sense of the accumulation, I suppose. Where you can see it from the side. That's a bit more snow accumulation. I mean, what, up to his ankle? I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to shovel all that snow. But this is, again,
thank you. And lastly, from this exhibit,
foundation
if you could,
to what's in these videos, who's in these videos, and he's the one that's
239.
Laying the foundation for all of this.
Mr. O'Keefe, what's up on
This will be that
the
evening
screen right
then?
now is that essentially what the driveway looked like at the end of sort of the snow blowing and the shoveling and snow removal that day.
The thing.
Yes.
And that vehicle towards the top, that's your vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And is this around the time that you would have been leaving your brother's house on January 29th?
Yes.
Riley Yates in the chat, congratulations on finishing your MS in Forensic Med. Graduation Friday, congratulations. Christina is waiting for her flight while watching. Fingers crossed for Wi-Fi on the airplane. Well, if we're just laying foundation for the rest of the day, it might be all right. Do we have to turn the lights back on? I'm leaving mine off.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
The fan gave me a headache. My brain is spicy. We're just doing this. Celia said, as a Finn, that's a light dusting of snow. Cora said, in Tennessee, if 2 flakes, mass run to buy milk and bread. Yeah, why is it always milk and bread? I buy all different kinds of snow snackies.
Gilman, if you could just enlarge that a little.
I learned that my first winter here in Tennessee. Milk and bread are not my
Now,
default
what's up on
snow
the
snackies.
screen, Mr. O'Keefe? Is that what you have before you as exhibit number one?
Yes,
And what are we looking at in this exhibit?
that's my brother.
And as far as your earlier testimony
Thank
in
you for the
regard
memberships,
to
Lizzie.
the vehicle that he kept sort of on the left side of the garage, what, if anything, do you recognize?
It's depicted in the picture. It's a convertible 1971 Ford LTD.
And with reference to that vehicle,
What?
how did your brother feel about that vehicle?
Why?
He enjoyed it. He thought it was fun driving around, in a convertible.
Yeah.
Nephew Patrick enjoyed, being driven to baseball games and whatnot in it. So
And your niece, Kaylee, how did she feel about it?
What?
she did not like it. Still doesn't.
Thanks, sir. May I approach this to retrieve your?
What? I mean, it's a.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. O'Keefe, sir, I have no questions for you.
All right, Mr. O'Keefe, you are all
Smart.
set, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
This way, sir.
1 second.
The defense passed for cross-examination because what is there to cross-examine the brother of the victim on? The defense has no. I think the judge laughed at the teen not liking the
Your
vehicle.
next
Call
witness.
I'm sorry, your call will call Mrs. Erin O'Keefe to the stand.
But the defense, again, for the defense, no need to call anybody. No need to cross-examine. Okay, he laid foundation. He talked about his brother.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
It takes
Thank you. You may take this.
quite a lot of confidence and sometimes skill and experience to know when to not cross. So,
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last
she
name?
already looks upset.
Sure, it's Erin O'Keefe, Okeefe,
And where is it that you live now?
West Bridgewater.
And who, if anyone, do you live there with?
I live with my husband, Paul, and our two girls.
And how long have you lived there in West Bridgewater?
This is the last
Be
witness's
10 years
wife.
this year.
And your girls, how old are your girls?
Now 13 and 10.
And what is your husband's name?
Paul,
And how long have you and Paul been together? How long have you been married?
will be 24 years this year and 17 years married this year.
It was a test because he asked
And,
your
do
husband
you
the
work
same
now?
thing.
I do.
And what do you do for work?
Currently, I switched jobs. Currently, I work for a mechanical contractor.
And just sort of in general terms, what type of work is it that you do?
I'm their marketing director.
And you said you switched jobs. So how long have you been doing this sort of new job?
Why does it matter?
I'll be there 2 years in October.
I know they want the jury to get to know the
And-
witnesses, but also
Your husband, Paul, how did the two of you meet?
I was his waitress in a bar when he was in college.
And as far as your husband Paul is concerned, his parents, what are their names?
John and Margaret,
And your husband Paul, did he have any siblings?
two, an older sister and an older brother, John and Kristen.
And of the three, John, Kristen, and Paul, who's the oldest, who was the youngest? And what was
why?
sort of the age
Why?
difference
Why?
between them?
You already asked him that.
Kristen was the oldest. Johnny was next, and Paul being the youngest. And Paul's 3 years younger than Johnny? 4.
And your sister-in-law, Kristen, she was the oldest, correct?
Mhm.
Was she married at some point?
Yes, her husband, Steve.
And do you recall about when it was that your sister-in-law, Kristen, and Steve got married?
They got married in 2006.
And
Your sister-in-law, Kristen, and her husband, Steve, did they have any children?
They did, Kaylee and Patrick.
And Kaylee and Patrick, about how old are they now?
Kaylee is 16 now, and Patrick is 13 now.
Now,
Excuse me.
at some point, did their last name was Furbush? Is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point, did your sister-in-law Kristen, her husband Stephen, and their children move to the town of Canton?
They did.
And about what time or what year was that?
About why do we need this testimony again when we
2009,
just had it before
2010,
lunch?
I believe.
Why? Like why? Just
And if you
Can-
know, where had they been living?
tell me
previously,
why.
before
We
they
just
moved?
did that.
They were renting out their townhouse in Abington, so they were living in Dorchester with Johnny.
Okay.
And if you know, at the time that they were living with Johnny, were both Patrick and Kaylee born yet, or
Just Kaylee.
just Kaylee? So fair to say she was relatively young at that point.
Yes.
I really don't know why
Now,
they're going through the background
at some point,
again.
Your sister-in-law Kristen
Can't
got
help
sick,
chat.
correct?
Correct.
And do you recall when about that was that you learned of that?
It was June 2013, beginning of June.
And do you recall what she was sick from or what the diagnosis was?
She was diagnosed with glioblastoma.
And at some point subsequent to that, she passed. Is that correct?
Correct. 6 months later,
Sometime in fall, November 2013.
November 11th, 2013.
Now, at that point in November,
Art by Julie, we
2013,
cannot zoom. I think we were
as far
caught
as
up.
you and the rest of your family was concerned, what
If we're
was sort of
already like, can we?
the plan or the expectation? as
Imagine
far as
how the
what was
jury
going to
feels.
happen with the children, Patrick and Kaylee?
I know that my in-laws were helping while Steve was still here. Steve passed away 2 months later, but my in-laws were helping Steve kind of get acclimated.
And what, if any, role did your brother-in-law, you called him Johnny, is that correct?
Yes.
So what, if any, role did your brother-in-law Johnny have with respect to the kids during this time?
He was very involved because he was very involved when my sister-in-law was sick. I think he was out on, he'd hurt his hand or something when he was working out on the, when he was out on the streets, I guess. And so he was on disability and was helping and
She's
going
like,
to the
when he
hospital
was-
all the
when he
time
was
and
beat.
being with Kristen.
He got hurt, so he was
You
out on
mentioned he
leave.
was out on disability and that he was working. What was it?
She didn't
that your
say
brother-in-law,
disability, but
Johnny O'Keefe, what did he
Assumes
do
facts,
for
not evidence.
He was a police officer in Boston.
Now, you mentioned that shortly after your sister-in-law Kristen passed away, her husband Stephen also passed away. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so, what, if anything, sort of became the plan, or what happened with respect to your niece and nephew following their father's death?
I don't know why they need to double down on this.
Paul and
It's-
Johnny went out to lunch one day, and
Not in controversy.
we had kind of assumed because Johnny was out on the streets doing his job like that Paul and I would take the kids, and Johnny said he was going to do it.
So he sort of volunteered or stepped up to do it, correct?
Correct.
And pursuant to that, where did Johnny go to live? Where did the kids live
I know,
when he did this?
because the last witness said it
Johnny
like 2 hours
moved
ago.
into their house in Canton, the original house that Steve and Kristen had bought. He moved in with the kids there.
Which is probably great for the kids to
And
stay in their home.
About how long was
But-
it that Johnny lived there with the kids? Sort of assumed that role.
Maybe 4 years, 4 or 5 years. I don't remember the exact year that he bought the new house.
I don't know if I need the ins and outs of all their
So
real
they lived there
estate.
for 4 or 5 years, and then you mentioned that he bought a new house. Where was the new house that he bought?
The new house is the house now on Meadows Ave in Canton.
And so from whenever time Johnny bought that house, he lived there basically with the kids, Kaylee and Patrick, until he passed away as well, correct?
Correct.
And with respect to your niece and nephew, what, if any, sort of legal relationship did Johnny have with respect to the kids?
It's
passing?
literally the same question.
He became their guardian.
And during the time that, from the time that your brother-in-law Johnny sort of took over that guardianship with respect to your niece and nephew, as far as dating was concerned, what, if any, sort of long-term relationships did he have during that period? Before you answer that, if I could just ask you for your definition as far as what do you deem or term as far as a long-term relationship?
1-2 years, I guess, as a start. 2 years.
So during that time, after he assumed sort of guardianship of the kids, how many of those relationships, 1 to 2 years or so, did Johnny have during that time?
2.
And what were the names of the people that he had those relationships with?
The first was Amy, and then Karen.
And just to be clear, by Amy, that was, where she lived, what town?
She resides in Westwood.
If I was the
She had
defense,
children
I
of her
would
own, is that correct?
let the jury be bored
And the
too.
second that you mentioned was Karen, is that correct?
I'm not going to help by
Correct.
objecting.
What is Karen's last name?
Reed.
Just for clarity purposes, do you see?
I don't know
you knew
what-
Karen Reed, correct?
Yes,
So just for
I don't know.
clarity
I always felt like
purposes,
I was in a
record,
hurry during trial,
you
so
see
I was
Karen
always
Reed in
like,
the
can we?
photo.
I do.
Could you just
get to the main
identify
point,
her
nothing
as to
else.
Where she's seated or an article of clothing she's wearing?
Black
There.
or blue blazer.
All right, just ask the record reflect the identification of the defendant by the way.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Ms. Reed, as far as her relationship with regard to your niece and nephew, what, if any, sort of legal relationship did she have with regard to either your niece
Oh,
and
Colleen,
nephew
half
or
of
to
every
your
trial.
brother-in-law, John?
There are moments, and then
Legal,
there is
none.
Now, as far as
the slog.
over the course of, when was the first time
I spilled on
that you
myself.
recall meeting the defendant, Ms. Reed?
I believe it was in June of 2020 during COVID.
Based on sort of your understanding, when was that in relation to when they began sort of
Like,
their
why? Just
I think it was in February or March of that same year.
So right around the time that the pandemic caused a sort of general shutdown, correct?
I think so, yes.
Now, as far as you were aware, did you know of any sort of pre-existing relationship or any time that they had dated in the past prior to that February, March of 2020?
I learned that after the fact.
So fair to say during any sort of previous
That's a very
time that they may or may not have dated,
good
you
way to
hadn't met
answer,
Ms. Reed, you weren't
because
aware
she's
of
saying,
her.
I didn't know at the
Correct.
time. I
I
learned
had not
later,
met her.
so that's hearsay.
And do you
But she's
recall
been very
sort of where
concise
you
in her
were, what
answers.
circumstances
The questioning,
were
on the
first
other
time
hand,
that
is
you met the defendant?
I believe we were all coming to our house. It was either, it may have been a birthday party or Father's Day, but we were out on the patio. I think it was June.
So John O'Keefe, Miss Reed, as well as the children came over to your house for some kind of holiday or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, from that time sort of going forward, how would you describe sort of your relationship with the
The
defendant?
lead defense attorney was just
I liked her a lot.
Big old yawn.
And
So
as
she and
far
Karen
as,
became friendly.
Prior to January 29th of 2022, would you consider yourself or characterize your relationship as friends?
I would.
And about how often,
Good.
sort of from that time of when you first met her in June of 2020 through January, the end of January 2022, how often would you see sort of your niece, your nephew, Mr. O'Keefe, and or Ms. Reed?
1-2 times a month. It was COVID, so when we could be outside or all get together, or if there was a birthday.
And were there any occasions where you would have occasion to spend time with or hang out with the defendant outside of either your husband or your brother-in-law, Johnny O'Keefe?
Yes, and we talked quite often.
And just in regard to sort of in person, about how many times was that?
Without them, I don't recall.
Now, as far as your understanding of sort of the living arrangement around it, how often?
Just a
what was your
very,
understanding
very
as far as
concise witness.
the relationship and sort of where
This is
everybody
the
lived or where
point
everybody stayed, or
that he's trying to
how
get to the
often?
nature of the relationship that she observed between
I
the
believe
victim and the
that
defendant.
Karen was there most times. I do know that
So that's what he's getting
she
to.
liked to go home on Mondays just to kind of have a fresh time by herself. And Thursdays, she was teaching an online class, so she would be home on Thursdays as well. But for the majority of the time, I believe she was over there.
Now, just to be clear, when you say over there, you mean the house on Meadows?
Correct.
And when you say she was home, where else did she have a home during that time?
In Mansfield.
And had you had occasion to be over her house in Mansfield at any point in the time that you were friends?
I had gone over once, yes.
Now, with respect to their relationship, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as fights, arguments, issues, anything like that?
I think normal relationship, you know, the stuff everyone goes through.
If I could ask you just if you could expound upon that a little as far as when you say normal relationship stuff, what exactly do you mean?
I know that, you know, my in-laws being there often could be stressful. And, you know,
That's a gentle but honest answer.
People with kids and life, normal everyday relationship.
Stuff. People fight about
Now,
stuff.
during this time frame,
She's
you were
like,
living
stuff.
in
People fight about
West
stuff.
Bridgewater
Life is
still,
hard.
that correct?
Adulting is
Correct.
hard.
And where were you?
In-laws
what
are
town
hard.
were you working in at that point?
At that time, I was working in Brighton.
So fair to say, relatively long commute between Brighton and West Bridgewater on a daily basis.
Correct.
And so during that sort of long commute, what, if anything, would you do with reference to the defendant, or who, if anyone, would you typically talk to on those long commutes?
I would text her or call her and say, I'm hey and driving, and or she would call me and we would just shoot the breeze and just talk.
Me, every time I'm in the car. I'm such a car chatter.
How often would you do that?
Quite often.
Anybody else you're in the car, you're like, it's my time to catch up on phone calls.
Defendant Ms. Reed,
Just me.
you considered yourself friends or friendly, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that something that you communicated to her, or she communicated to you in any way?
Yeah. And yeah, we would say how well we got along, and she would say if they ever broke up, she hoped that she and I would stay friends.
Now, Mrs. O'Keefe, if I could turn your attention to
True Virgo in the chat said it's 2024. I don't talk on the phone.
2022 into January 29th of 2022. Actually, first, let me...
This has got to be awful
bring
for
it back
this
a little bit
witness.
further.
She clearly was very close
New
with the
Year's
defendant.
Eve, going from
The defendant's being
2021
accused of killing her
2022.
brother-in-law, who she clearly
Recall that
liked.
time frame?
I do.
And did you recall where you were or who you were with
That's so hard.
around that time of New Year's?
We were in Aruba for my mother's birthday.
And when you say we, who, if anyone, were you in Aruba with?
My mother, father, sister, husband, and our two girls.
And over the course of that, were you also aware of where your brother-in-law, Johnny O'Keefe, and Miss Reed, and children, Patrick and Kaylee, were at that time as well?
They were also in Aruba.
And so where they were situated in Aruba, where was that in relation to where you were situated in?
We weren't close. You'd need a cab. It was not the other side of the island, but far enough away you'd need to catch a cab. They were more downtown.
And what, if anything, did you know about sort of who they were with or how they had come to be there in Aruba at that time?
They were with a large group of people. I don't know how many, but there was a large group of people that was going down.
So they were down for
And as far as
separate
you
New
knew,
Year's.
Was there any one person, excuse me, in particular that organized
Festivities?
sort of that trip? Or,
Yes, Laura Sullivan.
and do you know Laura Sullivan?
I do.
And how do you know Laura Sullivan?
I know Laura through Johnny. He's her son's godfather.
And fair to say, as far as you knew, that Mr. O'Keefe, Johnny O'Keefe, and Laura Sullivan had known each other for some time.
Correct.
Now, at any point,
Is that who the brother was
when
like?
you
Yeah,
were
they had gone to like homecoming
in
together or
Aruba,
whatever in high school or something.
during around the time of New Year's, did you ever meet up with or connect with Miss Reed and Johnny O'Keefe?
We did not.
Now, at some point in time when you were in Aruba during that same time frame, what, if any, conversation did you have with Miss Reed, the defendant?
I don't believe any with Johnny. Karen texted me on the flight down. The flight attendants were Karen and Erin, and we were trying to arrange and see if there was a time we could get together.
So the flight attendants on their flight down had the same names as both yourself and Ms.
That's
Reed.
funny.
That, yeah, she texted me and said that.
And so you had been trying to arrange some time or some day to sort of meet up. Is that correct?
I don't know. I don't recall. I had texted her on New Year's Eve to see where they were.
Can you imagine
And
sitting and
what,
watching
if
one of your
anything,
good
did
friends
she
testifying
reply,
about your
Did she
conversations?
reply in text?
It's just not easy for anybody.
She did. It wasn't until later in the evening that she had caught Johnny kissing Laura's sister in the lobby of the hotel.
And what, if anything, further did she indicate to you in regard to that?
This is not hearsay.
Just that they got into an argument about it.
And so did the two of you, and by the two,
That's why
sort
this
of
witness
two
is
groups
here.
Of families, did you ever connect or meet up at any point when you were in Aruba?
We did not.
Do you have any further conversation with Ms. Reed in reference to what she had indicated occurred at their resort?
I responded and said, like, kissing, and I don't recall what her response was, but I had missed the next text. She said did I want to meet up? She had freshened up and did I want to meet up? But I had missed it and was either already going to bed or just missed it until the next day.
So she had indicated to you via text that they had got into an argument, and then further indicated
That's
or
leading.
asked you if you wanted to meet up, correct?
Correct.
And compound.
All right, Ms. Tillelli, I'm just going to give a brief instruction at this point. All right, excuse me. So, folks, you just heard testimony about statements that were
Made by
allegedly
the
made by the defendant. You're really not to use the statements for the truth, but you can consider them solely on the limited purpose of the
Motive.
defendant's state of mind,
State of mind.
and as they go to the nature of the relationship between the defendant and John O'Keefe. Thank you.
Chad, I see a lot of questions, so I'm going to pause this real quick. The sister-in-law is testifying that while they were in Aruba, she got a text from Karen Reed, who she was very close with. Karen said she saw the victim, John O'Keefe, the defendant's boyfriend at the time, kissing his friend from high school's sister while they were in Aruba. So that is the testimony that's coming in. Victim kissing family friend's sister.
Now,
I can
between
zoom.
that time in Aruba,
We're going to
and
1.25.
January 28th of 2022,
Oh, that's
had
better.
you had occasion to meet up with Johnny O'Keefe and or the defendant Karen Reed or the kids or anybody from that Canton house?
No, our older daughter tested positive, and she and Paul had to
For
stay back
COVID.
in Aruba. So we didn't have, and then by the time they got back, it was back to school, and we didn't have a chance.
So your oldest daughter was quarantined along with your husband in Aruba, and they came back sometime after you and your younger daughter?
Correct.
And
So
with
this goes to
respect
nature of the
that,
relationship.
that sort of weekend of January 28th into January 29th. What, if any, plans did you have initially to meet up with your brother-in-law, Johnny, and the defendant?
Johnny had been communicating to Paul that wanted to get us together on the 29th. And I said, there's a big storm coming. I don't think that's going to happen.
And so you were aware somehow of the big
So they were
storm
in
coming on
Aruba
that
over
weekend as
New
far as the
Year's.
29th was concerned?
Correct.
And what, if anything, do you recall sort of about what you
We're
were aware of
supposed to
as
get
far as
together
that
the
storm,
night
like
he
how
was
severe,
killed.
what kind of storm?
I don't recall specifics, but I knew that it was a big storm that was coming for Saturday with a lot of snow.
And so you didn't think that was a good idea to set up a time to meet up at that time?
Correct.
Now,
I don't want to go driving around the snow either. I don't blame them at all. It's like, nope,
on that date,
miss me. I'm going to be hunkered
January
down
28th,
with snacks. Had
what, if
Animal
any,
Crossing.
conversation did you have with Ms. Reed on that day?
She had texted me while I was waiting for the school bus, asking if there was any chance I was out without Paul.
Was that a typical thing that she would text you as far as the without Paul part?
No.
And you indicated that you were waiting for the school bus. Is that right?
Correct.
And at that time in January of 2022, you had two daughters, correct?
Yes,
Were
correct.
they sort of in the same school as far as on the same bus?
No, they were not. They're separate schools.
So fair to say one was maybe in elementary, one was in middle school.
Correct.
So as far as around that time that you received the text, would that have been the younger daughter or the older daughter that you were waiting for the bus?
The younger daughter. It was after 3 o'clock.
And who comes home? Or
Waiting
at that
for
time,
pickup.
Who came home first, the younger daughter or the older?
Our older daughter.
And when you received that text from the defendant, what, if anything, how did you respond to it?
I said that I was waiting for the school bus and we had basketball on Friday nights.
And the basketball on Friday nights, was that something that was one of your daughters or both?
Both.
And do you recall, well, let me ask you this. With regard to your daughter's basketball, at least at that time, what, if any, sort of relationship did your husband have to those basketball teams?
He was
We
the
know
coach
he's
for
the
both of them.
coach.
And was that
Council,
something that
we
was
get
sort of
it.
like a local league? Is that correct?
Town league.
Town. Okay. And did all of you, and by all I mean yourself, your husband, and the two girls, did you all go to both games that night?
Correct.
And do you recall about what time those games were?
6 or 7.
Now, Ms. Reed reached out to you and texted you, and then you responded as you described. What, if any, further conversation did you have with Ms. Reed on that day?
I asked her if everything was okay, if something was up, and she responded and said, just another day, I wish I didn't talk to an O'Keefe after 2004.
And how did you respond to that? If you
Oh,
I said, what happened? What's going on? And they had bickered, I guess, about her taking Kaylee to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning before school.
And just to be clear, when you say they, you mean Johnny O'Keefe and Karen Reed?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall sort of how that conversation evolved, or what, if anything, else was said during that time?
I just knew that they had gotten into some type, I don't know if it was an argument or there was something. They bickered about her taking them, and he said that she spoiled them.
I mean, okay.
Now, as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed in regard to the weekend, what, if anything, did the two of you talk about as far as sort of plans for the weekend?
I said I was anticipating a storm, so was probably going to hang in the neighborhood with everybody.
Now, as far as later on in that afternoon, what, if any, sort of further communication did you receive from Ms. Reed that day?
I think the last text was a picture, something that popped up in her memories of my children and Kaylee and Patrick from the Cape that summer, and said, this just popped up in my memories and made me smile.
I love getting those
Now,
texts.
did you have occasion to talk with Ms. Reed any further on that day, the 28th?
The Cape is lovely.
No, that was it.
And so you went to your kids' basketball games, came back to your house, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall about what time you went to bed that night?
It was either close to midnight or after, because Paul and I were sitting up watching TV,
Do you recall what you were watching on the TV?
Yellowstone.
Was that sort of a binge watch that you were doing?
Yes.
Now,
Okay.
before you went to bed, did you have occasion to sort of?
I mean,
knowing
we're
that
now
snow
1
was
degree
coming,
of
did you have
separation
occasion
between
to
this
sort of
trial
about
and the
making
Hannah
observations
Gutierrez
about
Reed trial.
what the
So
weather was like before you went to bed?
I noted that while we were still up watching television that it was snowing already.
I didn't expect Yellowstone
And
to
did you
enter
have
this
occasion to
trial,
see whether
but
or not it was
here we go.
Sticking to either the pavement or the grass or anything like that.
I looked out on the deck and it was starting to accumulate on the deck, sticking to the deck.
You know about what time that was?
Probably around 10:30 or 11.
And this is at your house in West Bridgewater.
Correct.
And I do have this at 1.25. We're
You go
not
to bed
caught
and
up
at
to
some
real
point you wake
time
up on
just
the
yet.
29th, and if you recall, what is it that wakes you up the next day?
So it's
I woke
It
up
is sped up a
to my
little.
husband on the phone with his mother saying he's going to be okay.
I'm gonna slow this back down as she gets into this testimony. A, because I think it's important, and B, the demeanor is gonna seem weird, sped up.
He's
But-
going to be okay.
I feel for her. This has got to be
And
gut
they
wrenching
got off
for
the
her.
phone and I said, what happened? And what's going on? And he said they found Johnny in the snow this morning.
And after that phone call, what is it that your husband Paul did?
He's pacing around and he goes to the bathroom to brush his teeth because he said that he was going to drive to the hospital.
Yeah, I'm sure he was like,
Do you know what hospital
bye.
he was going to drive to?
Good Samaritan.
And based on the weather and sort of the road conditions, what, if any, concerns did you have about that plan of your husband?
That's leading.
I was concerned with him driving because the roads weren't good.
Yeah, and I
Now,
can see him
as
being
far
like,
as,
I have a Forerunner. Bye.
Your in-laws. So your father-in-law is John O'Keefe Jr., is that correct?
Senior.
See. And your
Yeah, the victim
mother-in-law
is John O'Keefe
Margaret
Jr.
Peggy O'Keefe, is that
Correct.
And what, if any, information did you have as far as were they going to the hospital, and if so, how were they there?
They were going to the hospital, and Carrie Roberts was going to pick them up because they didn't have a car that could drive in the snow.
Now, was Carrie Roberts?
I
someone
imagine
that you
after
knew
losing
prior to
2
this
children, you also wouldn't want to drive through the snow to the
I
hospital
knew
and
her
find out.
from when Johnny moved to Canton.
And at some point, do you recall approximately how long was it between the time that the phone call comes in and the time that your husband left your house?
10 minutes.
Relatively quick. I'm sorry, you just have to.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So then, when your husband is leaving, what, if any, similar to earlier the previous evening, what, if any, observations did you make as sort of the weather and what was going on outside at the time he was leaving?
It was snowing when he was leaving. Heavy.
Now, at some point, you're at home and your children are at home with you. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point, who, if anyone, do you reach out to sort of find out what's going on?
So what
When
happens next?
Paul was brushing his teeth, I said to him, "Where's Karen? Where is she? Is she okay?"
I mean, this is all
And I
hearsay.
called her, and I could
But it
hear the phone
explains
pick up. And
What happens next?
she didn't say hello. I just said, "Karen, what the hell is going on?" And she just yelled back in the phone, "John's dead."
That's why this witness is
And
testifying.
Carrie Roberts grabbed the phone from her and said, "No, he's not. He's at the hospital. They're working on him." And I didn't know what was going on.
Was there any further conversation on that initial phone call that you made to?
They were in Carrie's car waiting for an ambulance to pick up Karen. And then Carrie was going to pick up my in-laws.
As far as sort of going through that day, what was the next learned as far as your brother-in-law?
Some of
Johnny,
it's hearsay, but it's for completeness. The relevance is what the
when I
defendant said.
spoke to Carrie in the car, I asked her to take my phone number. I knew she was going to the hospital, and I was nervous that Paul was going to be there by himself. So I asked her to please keep me
In the loop.
informed as to what was happening when she got there.
And without any reference to anything that Ms. Roberts may or may not have said to you,
Because that would be hearsay.
further updates from Ms. Roberts throughout the course of that morning?
I think I called her every 5 minutes.
This is going to be around 6 a.m. that first
At
call.
some point,
because it was
did you
as-
learn,
Her husband was getting ready to leave, which
what
was,
sort of the status was?
God, what, after 6:30, he said?
I think it was,
When the
I
mom
don't
called?
recall the exact time, but Carrie had texted me or called me to let me know when they were finally called in by the doctors from the emergency room.
And what, if anything, did you learn once they had been called in by the doctor?
That he had passed. I don't know why.
Sustained.
It's an odd objection, but okay.
At some point,
We all know what she learned,
later on in that day.
that he had passed.
Did you have further conversation with the defendant this week?
I did.
And do you remember approximately what time that was?
I think it was around 1 o'clock.
And if you recall, was that a situation where you called her or she called you, or?
I called her because
Yeah, she
I
wanted to
didn't know what
the
was
fuck
going
happening.
on.
Yeah.
And I kept saying to my husband, "Has
What
anyone
is
checked
happening?
on Karen? Is Karen okay?" So I called her.
And when you called her, what, if any, conversation did you have with her at that time?
She answered the phone and said that I was on speaker and she was in the car with her dad. And they were driving to Dighton.
And what, if any, questions did you ask her about what had happened, and what, if anything, did she say?
I asked her, I said, "What the hell happened last night?"
Yeah, what is happening?
And because I couldn't understand first how they were together, if they had been arguing earlier in the day. And she told me that they were out, that she dropped him at a party afterwards, didn't feel like going, so dropped him and went back to Canton.
What, if anything, did she say occurred after?
What the
dropping
defense
Johnny?
says happens too.
She said she went back to Canton and I think woke up around 4:30 and couldn't find him, and woke up Kaylee to see if Kaylee had heard from him at all.
What, if anything, did she say happened after that?
She said that she went to go out and look, but the roads were bad, so went back and called Kerry and Jen so that they could drive together.
And by Kerry, you understood that to mean Kerry Roberts.
Kerry Roberts,
And by Jen, who, if anyone, did you understand that?
Jen McCabe.
Is that someone that you knew or were familiar with at that time?
I had never met Jen.
And what, if anything, did she say happened after that when she went out with Kerry and Jen?
I don't, is it possible to refresh my memory on that?
She's like, I don't remember. Did I say something? She's like, did I testify? Did I talk about this before? Because I don't,
Without-
you could see her
without
trying to
getting-
remember.
Just as far
It's
as
like, I don't remember.
Beyond sort of what happened, what, if anything else, did the defendant say to you as far as
She told me that
There
she
was
had
no
to remember
question.
the bad times, which struck me as an odd comment to say, but I assumed since she was at the hospital that maybe she was medicated, but it just struck me as something odd.
now, in
Like,
addition to
Medicated,
the,
sedated?
having to remember the bad times, what, if anything else, did she say to you at that point during that phone call?
She said, I don't think I'm ever going to see you guys again. And I said, of course you will. We're friends.
Now, following that conversation,
It's an interesting
that day,
conversation.
Did you ever speak with the defendant, Karen Reed, again?
No.
This is like, as he's at the hospital, she's like, I don't think I'll ever see you guys again. Wouldn't you assume if this family got along with her and their friends that they would all be together at the funeral? Like, I need you guys. You're my family. She's been taking care of
Yes.
their niece and nephew. It's interesting that what she's saying is, I don't think I'll ever see you guys again. It's odd versus where are you? I need you. And that's, I'm sure, what the state is going to argue, that Karen said he's dead before they had even gotten to him in the
Just one
snow.
last question, ma'am. So in regard to those last two statements that you had testified about, was that all part and parcel of the same conversation when the defendant indicated she was driving back with her father to Dighton?
Correct.
Yeah,
So there was no further conversation after that conversation shortly after 1 p.m.?
No.
the state is going to
I
argue
have
that
nothing
it's
further for this
consciousness of
witness.
guilt.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no questions.
All right, Ms. O'Keefe, you're all set. Thank you.
I like the defense strategy here.
Mr. Lally, your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Officer Stephen Saraf to the stand.
They're moving right along. On witness 3, Officer Stephen. I lost the last name. But they are moving right along. I think it's a good strategy, no cross of the victim's family members. They've said what they've said. I think you save the smoke for the law enforcement. And I think if you're the defense, you treat this family as a grieving family that deserves a lot better and who deserves answers, and you save your smoke for law enforcement for not doing their job. I think that's really where the defense is going to lean in. Thank you, Miguelina.
Jury, the case ever here should be truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you.
All right, with witness 3.
You can sit or stand, whatever you want to do.
He's probably in a
Just ask that you speak into the microphone, please.
belt then. You heard the effort
Okay,
to sit
whenever
down.
you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Officer Saraf, Saraf, Canton Police Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Police Department?
About 27 years.
Now, were you working with the Canton Police Department on January 28th into January 29th of 2022?
I was.
Do you recall what shift you were working on that occasion?
I was working midnight to 8 shift.
Midnight to 8 a.m., is that correct?
That is correct.
And were you dispatched to a call at approximately 6:05 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And if you recall, what was the dispatch in regard to, and where specifically were you dispatched to?
It was a call of a person that was unconscious outside, I believe it was 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
Now, that particular area of Canton, are you familiar with that area of Canton?
Yes.
And
Yeah, the witness
as far
box
as
is
the town of Canton is
small.
concerned with respect to police department, is there any sort of different sectors within the town that you would be assigned to patrol?
That's correct.
And the area of Fairview Road, would that be within your sector that you
Yes.
typically
Yes.
patrol?
That was West Sector.
And how many sectors within the town of Canton are there?
4.
Now, that particular area of Fairview Road, what type of area is that? Is it residential, commercial, or something else?
It's residential.
And the roadway of Fairview Road, there's houses on that roadway, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there any sort of, it's a paved roadway, is that correct?
It is, yes.
The lanes, are they divided by any sort of lines in the middle of it?
Yes.
I will just remind everybody
And
that
if
this
anyone owns or
courthouse was
maintains
built
that
in
particular road.
The town of Canton does?
1827. So for all
Now,
of you
you
who are
received
like,
that
what is up with
dispatch.
this
Where
courtroom?
were you, if you
18.
recall,
It was
when you
built in like
received it?
1827.
I was, there's a church right next to the police
No.
station. I was in that parking lot.
And with respect to the evening of the 28th into the morning of the 29th,
And replaced the previous
what, if
courthouse that was built in
anything, were you aware of
1792.
as far as sort of forecast of the weather or anything sort of impending coming in?
Yeah, it was snowing pretty good that night. It was a snowstorm that evening.
So there's a snowstorm that had been predicted, is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, the microphone
There's a
might also
snowstorm
be from
actually occurring around
1827.
that time, just after 6 a.m.
That's correct.
And at the time that you're responding, a little after 6 a.m., was it light out, dark out, or something?
It was dark out.
I think this is one of the first responding officers. This is not the
Time that-
investigating
if you
officer.
know how
Trust
much
me.
time elapsed sort of between the time that you received
I'll
the
let you
call
know.
and the time that you arrived in that area of Fairview Road?
It's pretty close, so a couple of minutes maybe, because I didn't obviously go as fast as you could go because
'Cause
the
snow.
roads were pretty snowy.
During the course of, you have been working sort of since midnight, correct?
Correct.
And over the course of your work throughout that evening, had you, or what if anything, had you noticed with regard to snow removal as far as town plows or anything like that?
I don't understand. Were they plowing? Is
Sir,
that
it was
your
a terrible question.
I-
It's not on you.
They were plowing the roads.
It's not you.
So there had been some sort of treatment
It's-
or plowing to the roads prior to your response, as far as you know?
Yes.
What were sort of the road conditions or the visibility or anything like that, if you recall, during your response time?
It was snowing pretty well. The roads were definitely slippery. It took me a
They do
while
that.
to get to the
They're
to the destination.
slippery when wet and frozen.
And if you recall, sir, what was sort of the path of travel that you took from, you mentioned you were in the church parking lot next to the police station, correct?
That's correct.
And where is the police station located in
So
Canton?
the police station's on Washington Street, 1492 Wash.
And so what was sort of the path of travel that you took from the church lot next to the police station to Fairview?
So I went past the police station onto Chapman Street, and then from Chapman Street I went to Fairview.
Again, for a local jury, this makes sense.
And
For everyone else,
When you were approaching
not
Fairview
as
Road, are
much.
you taking
But for a
right
local
or
jury,
left
they're
or
like,
something?
oh, okay, you
So
went
right.
that way.
And as you were taking that right onto Fairview, what, if anything, happened with your vehicle as you were taking that turn?
Nothing that I recall.
What happened to your vehicle?
And
I drove
that
it.
particular, coming from that, the Chapman side of Fairview.
Should
Fairview
something have happened?
goes from Chapman and then it goes down to sort of, let's say, the bottom of the street. It connects with another street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is the street that?
Cedar Crest?
Pull up some of the super chats that I
And
missed.
If you're coming from the Chapman side down to the Cedar Crest side, what, if anything, is there as far as an elevation? Like, is it uphill, downhill?
Move point. I'll talk about this at a
down.
break.
It's down a hill, fairly decent sized hill.
Down a hill matters in the snow. Thank you, Kyle,
Now, as you
for the gift of
are
memberships.
driving down Fairview, what, if anything, I mentioned it was dark outside, correct?
That's correct.
But what, if anything, beyond sort of the headlights on your
Good to see you,
cruiser,
Rob.
Did you utilize for assistance as you were driving down Fairview?
I had a spotlight on the driver's side, a handheld spotlight to try to locate the house in question.
And if I could just ask you a little bit about the type of vehicle that you were driving. So was it, what kind of police cruiser were you driving?
It's Explorer.
So SUV, is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to
SUVs.
answer that question at a break.
And as far as those, or the particular cruiser that you were driving on that occasion, what, if anything, is it equipped with as far as cameras or anything like that within the vehicle?
Yeah, it's equipped with a camera for front and back. And,
So we're probably going to see his cruiser video of him pulling up.
in the rear seat of the.
Remember, the
cruiser.
state is using the fact that, or I
So
think will
as
be
you're
using the
driving
fact
down
that Karen
Fairview,
Reed
you
immediately
reach out
saw
and start
where
to
the defendant
utilize
was
your
as
spotlight
further
sort of
consciousness
on-
of guilt. Like,
where is that located on the cruiser?
he knows that
It's
she
on my
knows where he
left-hand
was
side.
in the snow. They're going to
Is that
argue because
spotlight
she
that's
left him
outside
there.
of the cruiser or
So
inside the
video
cruiser?
of
Where is it
how
located on
easy
the
or
outside
hard
of
it
the
was to
cruiser,
see him will
but there's
matter
a
from the
handle that
cruiser.
manipulates it so you can point the spotlight
But there's already people there, so
where you want to go.
So
it's
you have
the house with
sort
the
of
people
tool within the
outside.
cruiser where you can manipulate where it points.
That's correct.
why do we need 9
And
questions
as
about
you're
the
coming down,
spotlight on the outside of a cop
Fairview,
car?
Utilizing that spotlight, what, if anything, do you?
I think he
observe
was the
out
first
front?
on scene.
Well, as I got to
Or one
my
of the first on
destination, I
scene.
saw 3 people on the lawn.
Yeah, the one with the people outside.
In the snow, waving at me.
As they do.
And initially, when you see these 3 people in the snow, do you have any idea sort of who they are or male, female, anything like that?
There were 3 women, and I later learned there was a male subject on the ground.
And so
Later
when you
learned.
initially are sort of approaching or getting to the residence, you indicate you see the 3 women waving at you. Could you see, or what, if anything, could you see the body at that point?
I saw that there was somebody on the ground. Yes,
So you could see the 3 women and you could see a person on the ground.
that's correct.
And at some point, subsequent to this, did you learn the identity of the person on the ground?
I did.
And who did you learn that?
John
person?
O'Keefe.
And prior to this day, prior to
That's a
this
quick
dispatch,
answer.
did you know John O'Keefe in any way?
No,
Now, the 3 females that you saw sort of around Mr. O'Keefe's body on the ground, at some point later, did you subsequently identify who those 3 people were?
I did.
And who did you identify?
One was Karen Reed. The other one was Miss McCabe, and
If we're not caught up,
Miss
we're not
Robertson.
we're not
All right,
caught
sir,
up
I'm going
yet.
to ask you to keep your voice up, okay, or speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm gonna put us
Now-
on 1.25.
You arrive on scene and I'm assuming you get out of your
We're gonna
cruiser,
catch
is that
up at some
correct?
point.
that's correct.
What, if anything, did you do from there?
I walked over to the scene. I first asked, is this person a drug user? He's have an issue with drugs. Somebody said no. He's a Boston police officer.
He's trying to figure
I said,
out the
okay.
issue.
I checked for a pulse. I couldn't find a pulse. Then I went back to my cruiser and tried to find the AED, which is an automated external defibrillator.
Back this for a second there. So you indicated that you checked for a pulse, correct?
That's correct.
He said
And
that.
where on Mr. O'Keefe did you check for?
On his neck, it's carotid.
So if it's carotid, is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you made contact with sort of the skin area in
What
his
did you
carotid
notice?
area on his neck, what, if anything, did you observe as far as Mr. O'Keefe when you did?
I couldn't find any pulse or anything like
He's
that.
trying to
and
ask
he
if
was
he's
cold
cold.
to the touch.
Now, when you did this, Mr. O'Keefe, you mentioned was sort of on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
And how was he sort of positioned on the ground?
He was laying on his back.
And as far as your observations of Mr. O'Keefe during this initial time when you're checking the pulse, what, if anything, did you observe sort of on him or around him or anything like that?
I didn't really.
Let me ask it a different way. So as far as you mentioned that when you arrived there, it was snowing out, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so how much snow was in and around or on top of Mr. O'Keefe when you first?
That's
It was
compound.
about, I would say about 6 inches on the ground. There was a light dusting on top of him, I would say.
And what, if any, observations did you make of Mr. O'Keefe and sort of how he was dressed at this time initially that you observed?
I don't recall what he was wearing.
Now, with reference to the residence at 34 Fairview Road, if you're standing in front of the house on the street facing the house, which side of the property was Mr. O'Keefe lying on?
Again, it's interesting to
facing
me
the house, it's to the,
that the owners
I'm sorry,
of the
go again.
home
Can you say that again, please?
did
If
not
you're
come
standing on the
out.
street facing the house, was Mr. O'Keefe more to the center of the property, the right of the property, or the left?
He was on the left of the property, yes.
Now, in addition to Mr. O'Keefe, in this sort of area on the left side of the property, what, if any, sort of other landmarks or other things did you observe on that side of the property?
To the left of the property, there was a fire hydrant, a bush, and a flagpole, I believe. To the left, to the farther left, like more near the property line, I would say.
Now, with reference to, you mentioned that it was snowing out and there was snow on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
What, if anything else, did you note as far as the weather conditions, as far as wind, temperature, or anything like that?
I would say it was near blizzard conditions. It was snowing really, really hard.
And how cold?
Near
Obviously,
blizzard
January is snowing out. It was
conditions.
cold, but how cold was it, if you know, when you first arrived?
Less than 32 degrees. I don't know exactly. I mean, it was cold.
So you pull up in that area with the three females. Are they to your right or to your left?
I pulled up. Basically, I had my cruiser.
I know. I feel like the
Straight
what,
on.
if anything, is a bad habit at this
And
point.
so
Just
which side of the cruiser were,
ask the
were the
questions.
three females and Mr. O'Keefe when you pull up and stop?
It was straight ahead.
Straight ahead. Okay.
A little to the left.
And what, if any, other vehicles did you observe sort of in the roadway in that area where three females were and Mr. O'Keefe?
There was another vehicle in the roadway on the side of the road. I parked basically right behind that.
And do you recall anything about
There
that
was nothing
vehicle,
like a
what type it
Boston
was, what
Pact.
color or anything like that?
I don't recall.
Nothing at all.
Now, with regard to the three females you identified as Ms. Reed, Ms. McCabe, and Ms. Roberts, you recall where they were in relation to Mr. O'Keefe, each of them, when you first sort of pull up and get out of your cruiser?
So when I arrived, I saw Miss Reed looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face.
Now, in addition to yourself, there are other sort of first responders that have dispatched to the scene as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, not
And,
first on scene.
Of them, who, if anyone else, was on scene at the time that you arrived?
When I arrived, I was the first to arrive. Then there was Officer Mallory that came a few minutes later. And then,
See, the prosecution's question is compound and terrible. So it sounded like there were other people on scene when you arrived. And he's like, no, I was the first to arrive. What are we? Oh,
then the fire department came after him.
okay, so
and
he's the first
I
on
believe Sergeant
scene.
Good came like within that. I don't know how many minutes.
I
It was
figured that
pretty
because
close.
of the
So you're first to arrive on scene,
Timing.
and then Mulaney comes a couple minutes later.
Yes,
And about how long was it between when Officer Mulaney arrives and when the fire department arrives?
couple minutes. I don't.
And at some point after that, a Sergeant Good comes. Is that
That's-
I
correct?
wasn't really
Sergeant
paying
Good is a
attention.
sergeant with your department.
That is correct.
Now, the fire department, when they arrived, do you recall what type of apparatus they had that arrived on scene?
I believe it was an engine. They usually
A truck.
come with an engine and an ambulance.
So to your recollection, it was at least an ambulance and an engine.
Yeah. Yes.
When you were in transit, sort of coming from the church parking lot next to the station to 34 Fairview, what, if anything, did you have activated on your cruiser as far as lights or sirens or anything like that?
I believe I might have my blue lights on. I'm not sure.
He's like, nobody was out
As far as
driving.
the
I don't know
time
if I
that
had
you're
my
coming,
lights on. I wasn't
shortly
going
after 6 a.m. in a
fast.
blizzard. Was there,
It's
what, if any, sort of
snowing.
other vehicular
slippery.
traffic did you observe?
No one's on the
from
road.
Church parking lot to 34 Fairview.
There wasn't any
Right.
that I can recall.
No need for lights. No one's out.
So you go to get your AED device from your cruiser, is that correct?
That's correct.
And around that time that you're retrieving that, what happens?
The FD, the fire department, came on scene, and they took over care of Mr. O'Keefe.
As they do.
Now, beyond sort of just checking pulse, as far as around that time when you were checking the pulse in the carotid area for Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, other observations did you make with regard to any injuries or anything else on Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, when I first got there, he had blood on his face and it was just wiped away. So that's the only.
So there was blood on his face that was wiped away?
That's correct.
Are you going to repeat everything he says? Is that what we're doing? No.
Now, when the fire department arrives on scene and they sort of take over resuscitative efforts with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the person you identified as Ms. Reed, firstly, do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you just identify as where she's seated or an article of
Seating
clothing?
at the table right there, black.
Not does that record reflect identification by the witness?
Yes.
The record always needs to reflect the
After the fire
identification.
department arrived and they sort of take over resuscitative efforts with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, observations did you make of Ms. Reed and what she was doing or saying at that time?
Ms. Reed was visibly upset.
What was she
kept
doing?
saying, this is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this. And she was very hysterical.
And
She kept asking, he's dead. Is he dead? Is he dead?
And with that specific phraseology, that's something that she kept saying?
Yes,
And by your repetitive nature, I'm assuming it was something that she said more than once, correct?
Several
He
times, correct.
said she said it over and over.
And when
but
she's
okay.
saying this, can you describe sort of how she's saying this? I mean, is it a whisper? Is it a scream? Or is it something?
She was yelling pretty good.
Like she was panicked?
And with regard to her repetitive question as far as is he dead, what, if any, response did you provide to her in regard to that?
I just said they're doing the best that they can. I don't know.
Now, at some point, did you direct Ms. Reed, the defendant, to somewhere else away from Mr. O'Keefe?
Yeah, I tried to get her out of the elements. I put her in a car. I don't know if it was my cruiser or another cruiser there, but I had her sit in the back seat just to get out of the snow.
And
Because
did
it sounds like she
stay in
was
that cruiser for any,
freaking
She
out.
stayed in for a few minutes and then she was like up and down, up and down.
sort of in and out of whatever car you put her into?
That's correct.
When she would come out of the car, where would she go?
She was just walking around. From what I remember,
Now, with reference to Mr. O'Keefe, he's laying on his back on the ground. That location, where was that in relation to the roadway of Fairview Road?
I would say about 20 feet off the road.
So if it's 20 feet off the road, is it fair to say that was on sort of the front lawn of 34 Fairview?
Yes, that's correct.
It's a good question, Angie.
At some point, the fire department
Not frozen?
takes Mr. O'Keefe's body off of the lawn. Is that correct?
That is
And where were
correct.
you in relation to Mr. O'Keefe when that happened?
I don't remember.
And from, if you don't remember, do you
Oh, yes,
recall
I'm not
anything
breathing
about
into
sort
the
of
mic.
what the ground looked like when Mr. O'Keefe was lifted up?
I don't recall. I didn't.
Now that area,
However, CPR could have pushed, her doing CPR could have pushed blood up onto his face. So it I don't think it's determinative one way or the other. We'll get there
around
later.
where Mr. O'Keefe was. When you initially come up, you see him on the ground and you check for a pulse. If anything, did you note around Mr. O'Keefe's body as far as the condition of or disturbance of the snow around?
I noticed that there were footprints and track marks around the body itself. There was none coming from the residence or the area. It was just right around the body itself.
So no
And so
no footprints coming
the
from the
position
house.
that Mr. O'Keefe is lying on his back on the lawn, correct?
Correct.
Is his head closer to the house or the street or something else?
I believe his head was closest to the house.
And the footprints that you're talking about, was that between sort of his feet in the street or above his head, or where was it in relation to
Basically all around him because people were walking around him.
And as far as beyond sort of the immediate area above his head, between his head and the house, what, if any, footprints or what, if any, disturbance in the snow did you observe up there?
I didn't see any.
Now, Officer Saraf, about how long was it that you were on scene?
I want to say about an hour and a half.
And at some point, the fire department transports Mr. O'Keefe from the scene. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you know to what facility he was transported to?
I don't recall where they went.
And after Mr. O'Keefe was taken away by the fire department, as far as the three females, Ms. Reed, Ms. McCabe, and Ms. Roberts, do you know where they went or what they did following that?
They, after talking to Sergeant Good, they left in their car. I don't know where they went. The car that was there, they left.
Now, at any point in time that you were on scene before they left, did you have any conversation with any of the three of them?
I asked, where were they? What happened? And what were they doing?
And who specifically did you talk to, if you recall?
Well, I asked Miss Reed, and she couldn't really tell me too much about what happened. Miss McCabe said that they were drinking in a couple bars downtown.
Let me just stop you before, as far as, so just sticking with Miss Reed, you asked her what happened, and you indicated she didn't really tell you much.
No.
Why not? What was her condition like at that point?
She was very upset.
So the same upset that you were describing earlier, did that sort of continue throughout the time that she was on scene while you were there?
I would say yes.
And at some point, did you speak to Miss McCabe without reference to what she told you?
I'm sorry.
At some point while you're on scene, did you speak to either Miss McCabe or Miss Roberts without reference to what they told you?
No. I mean,
Let me rephrase.
rephrase it, yeah.
At some point when you're on scene, did you have occasion to have a conversation with Miss McCabe?
I mean, that's the
Yes.
same question.
And at some point when you were on scene, did you have occasion to have a conversation with Miss Roberts?
I didn't speak with Miss Roberts, I don't believe.
Was there
McCabe
someone
and
else from your
Roberts
department that was
were
speaking with
with
Miss Roberts on scene?
Karen Reed.
I believe Sergeant Good or Officer Mulaney was.
One of the other two officers that were there.
Correct.
Now, following Sergeant Good's arrival, who, if anyone else from your department, arrived on scene at some point?
Detective Sergeant Lank, and Lieutenant Gallagher.
And if you know, when was their arrival in relation to sort of when you arrived?
It was light out, so I want to say maybe 7 o'clock-ish.
And so for the period that you were on scene, you said it was about an hour and a half. Is that correct?
That's about right.
The weather conditions that you described sort of when you first arrived, what, if any, change occurred in the weather conditions from the time that you arrived and the time that you left the scene?
That was me.
The conditions lightened up a little bit. I mean, it was still snowing.
In the hour and a half you were there,
Still
did the
snowing,
weather
still cold,
change?
correct?
Yes, correct.
The wind, was that still persistent as well?
I would say yes.
Yes. How so? Whoa.
Now, at some point after Miss Reed, the defendant, left the scene, did she come back?
She did.
And do you know how long a period it was that she was gone between when she left and when she came back?
Just a few minutes.
And do you know why she came back?
I don't know.
And
Did
when
she say
returned to
anything
the
when she
scene,
came back?
who, if anyone, did you speak with her further at that point?
No,
Who, if anyone, did you observe her to be speaking with?
I don't recall.
Now, the initial ambulance that showed up took and transported Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, after that ambulance left and Miss Reed came back to the scene, what, if any, other apparatus from the fire department arrived on scene at that point?
Another ambulance came.
And who, if anyone, went in that ambulance for transport?
They took Miss Reed to the hospital.
And do you know what hospital that she went to?
I don't recall.
Okay. And
May I have one moment, Ron?
Yes.
yes, we'll get caught up to real time. It's so weird how these tables are set up to me. It's just odd. We got Post-its.
I request the lights be dim.
All right.
And, Your Honor, if I may request the lights be dim.
Okay, can we dim them, please?
I'm now going to start dimming the lights every time they dim the lights. Why not? Dim the lights for all. I mean, I have a
Ms.
window.
Gilman,
So
if I could have exhibit number 8 up on the screen.
doesn't help too much. Why didn't Carrie drive Karen straight to the hospital? It sounds like they came back and the
Officer,
ambulance
do you,
took her.
recognize what's depicted up on the screen as exhibit number 8?
Yes,
Or
But-
do you recognize that?
Does anyone
Um,
explain? No.
the house, 34 Fairview.
And that's the house that you responded to on that date. Is that
They're
correct?
not
That is
showing the
correct,
jury. That's
And
the
what's
gallery.
contained in that photograph, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed roughly when you arrived on that date?
That's
Yes.
the shittiest picture I've ever seen.
Yes.
That's not true. Not the shittiest I've ever seen.
This is just a laser point.
It's- It looks blurry to me. If it looks blurry to you, it looks blurry to me too.
So from this photograph in exhibit number 8, sir, where Mr. O'Keefe's body was when you first arrived, is that visible in this photograph or no?
I would say it would be over more to the left.
Okay, so further off to the
So
left, is that
not
correct?
visible
correct.
in this photo.
Before we get to that,
That photo's
just briefly,
Hard to see.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 13. could, please enlarge. Thank you. Now, Officer Saraf, do you recognize what's contained in this exhibit number 13?
When was this taken and by who?
It's a street.
That's, fair enough.
Ask bad questions, get bad answers.
Sorry. Let's see.
Though I did once have law enforcement have like black and white film in a camera, and they were taking pictures of like a blood trail, and you couldn't tell what it was
Yes,
from
this is-
anything.
Is
Terrible.
that a fair and accurate portrayal of what Fairview Road looked like around the time that you were dispatched and arrived on scene?
Yes,
Absent the lighting condition, you mentioned it was dark when you arrived, correct?
that is correct.
Blurry
This is
AF.
sometime after when the sun has come up.
Correct.
If I could ask you to flip to the next exhibit number 14, if I could have that one.
Is that a footprint?
And again, officer, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit 14?
Yes,
And you were testifying earlier about sort of footprints in and around where Mr. O'Keefe
Ian.
was, is that correct?
that is correct.
And what's depicted on the screen in exhibit number 14, is
You're
that
not
fair and
wrong.
accurate portrayal of the footprints that you were talking about?
Yes,
May I approach the witness, Ron?
Yes.
Oh. I mean, this happened in 2022. It's boggling to me that the photos
So now I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit 18.
are this. I mean, I get that snow is hard exposure wise and stuff, but like,
Thank you so much.
I don't think that would be unusual to their crime scene
This
investigators.
photograph, first and foremost, do you recognize what's depicted up in exhibit 18 on the screen here?
yes,
And this is 34 Fairview Road, correct?
that is correct.
And in regard to, you had mentioned some sort of landmarks off to the left side of the
I'm gonna
property,
stay down
facing
here.
the property from the street, correct?
Yes,
And if you could, using that laser pointer that I placed up there before you, if you could direct the jury's attention to first those landmarks that you observed. Laser pointer that I placed up there before you, if you could direct
green
jury's
laser
attention
pointer is not
to
helping
first
on the
those
white.
landmarks that you observed.
At all. I mean,
I'm sorry, officer, if you could, while you're
Oh,
directing,
sorry.
if you could just describe what you're.
so.
You
that's-
didn't tell him to do
there's
that.
the flagpole right there, there's a bush there, and right there, I believe, is the fire hydrant.
And so where in relation to this photograph, if you can see it here, was Mr. O'Keefe's body when you first arrived?
It's right in this area right here.
where it looks like all the foot traffic is.
Now, if I could turn back just a moment, when you indicated that you were coming up to the scene and you could see the three females sort of waving and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground, correct?
That is correct.
About how far away were you from them when you first observed them or first saw them?
About 20 feet or so.
And when you are driving down Fairview, if you could describe to the jury, where is your direction? Sort of, where are you directed as far as you're driving a vehicle? Are you looking straight in front of you, or are you looking out the window? A combination of both, or
I was
What?
looking for the house numbers, trying to find the house where it was, and there was, I saw the motor vehicle parked on the side of the road.
and that sort of leads to my next question, sir. So,
It's-
what did you see first? Did you see the vehicle parked in front of you, or
It's
did
baffling
you see
to
the
me that we
people
have
off to the
clearer
side?
pictures
I
of
saw
the
the
moon
vehicle.
than this crime scene. I think we have clearer pictures of like Jupiter than this crime scene. Mars rover,
Yeah,
clearer
closest
pictures.
to you.
I think we have
Yes.
clearer pictures of like the first photos of a black hole than of this crime scene, which the defense is going to argue for sure. Katie said in the chat, we can get a live stream from the moon.
So, Officer Saraf, you had testified earlier in regard to a camera within your cruiser, correct?
That's correct.
I would like to see that video. It's going to make me motion sick, but I would like
And
to see that
subsequent to that day, have you seen
video. Yay, Foundation.
the video of your arrival to the scene from the cruiser camera perspective?
I saw it once.
Okay.
Yes,
And
Juliana
Your Honor, I
Jones.
would seek to introduce in a minute as the next
We have
exhibit.
better pictures of both the Loch Ness Monster
cruiser
and
camera
Bigfoot
stream
than
1
this.
from cruiser 683.
Or is there an objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
And now we get to see the video from the cruiser. Yay!
I'm sorry for the back and forth, Mr. Officer, but if I could ask the lights again. Ms. Gilman, if you could
It's
play
much
what's
easier.
now
I mean, I
marked
can't
as
visualize
slide.
anything. It's much easier to understand when we show it. I like that the prosecution is orienting
And if you could just pause it right
the
there.
crime. Oh, God. I like that the prosecution is orienting the
Officer
jury
Saraf,
to the crime scene.
What's up on the screen? Is that
ish.
what you recall as far as the sort of visibility and the roadway?
He had lights and
conditions
siren
when you
on.
first left the church parking lot?
Yes.
And this is you sort of leaving from the church parking lot as you're going to 34th Fifth, correct?
Yes.
Now, there are a number of different sort of things up on this screen. There's an indication as far as the speed that the vehicle is going at, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And where is that located, if you could, with the
Yes,
laser
where is that
pointer?
located?
Sweet.
Am I in the way?
Whoops, sorry.
Oh, I am in the way. I have to move me.
Now,
Wait,
along
that's
sort of
not
the
me
bottom
moving me.
of that,
Down there where it
particular,
says patrol 9 miles an
video,
hour.
There's an indication
That's the
as
speed of
far
the car.
as mic, brakes, lights, sign, correct?
Correct.
I can't make this better.
If those are activated, is there any sort of change in sort of the depiction there? Does it change sort of color or anything
So-
like that you're aware of?
I don't know.
And the 683 on the bottom right
See if I can
corner, is
move
that the
me.
cruiser that you were in that day?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, as far as sort of the top middle of this video.
I'll just put me here for a
there's
minute.
Date and a time, is that correct?
That's correct.
As far as you're aware, that date and time that's up
Look
there,
at us.
that's accurate to when this occurred,
We
correct?
can make it work.
Yes.
Okay, so we're sort of looking in real time, correct?
Thanks, Streamyard.
Correct.
Did you see how easy that
So,
was?
Ms. Gilman, if you could just let it run from this.
Just let it run. Sure. Anyone who gets motion sick, you now know that we are going, well, I mean, it's not too bad when you can't really see the road. It's very, very wet. So, patrol vehicles moving, 20 miles an hour with lights and siren on towards the call out. Remember,
Ms. Gilman, I'm
dispatch
sorry, if you could stop.
called out this officer for an unconscious
Officer Saraf,
person.
This
It is
road you're
606
traversing at this
30.
point, this is Washington Street, is that correct?
That is correct.
And at some point, you're going to then travel through and then take a right onto Fairview, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you could, just for the jury's sake, as you approach Fairview and as you're taking that right turn, just direct their attention to the fact that that's when you're turning onto Fairview.
Sure.
Ms. Gilman, you can go ahead and continue.
Lynn in the chat asked, people get motion sick from videos? Yes, I do all the time. Yep. I mean, amongst other things. Some of our brains are a little spicier with the motion sickness. So the vehicle camera says 606 and 49 seconds now, going about 30 miles an hour. There's one other vehicle. You now see the lights because he's crossing a red light. So the lights went on as they're crossing a red light. The witness stand is very squeaky for those of you asking. It seems very squeaky.
So this right here is Chapman Street.
Which is helpful to the jury who will know this area. That street absolutely looks plowed. For all of you on the chat saying the street looks plowed, it does. Agreed. You can see the... I mean, from the video, you can tell that they're traveling slow. 30 miles an hour-ish for law enforcement rolling out is slow. That it is coming down. It's wet. You can see the plowed street and the snow piling up on the sides. I mean, that snow is blowing. When you see the streetlights, you can catch how much it's blowing.
This right here is Fairview.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it there for 1 second. So, officer, similar to as the turn onto Fairview, at some point, if you observe the point at which you believe you sort of illuminated your spotlight on the side of the cruiser, if you could just speak up and draw the jury's attention to that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could continue.
It looks like the windshield, even as he's driving, the windshield's really starting to freeze. Like it was slushing earlier. It's not slushing nearly as much now, and they've been driving for 3 minutes. Yeah, I don't know if new wipers would help in that.
Right about now,
snow.
I believe I put the spotlight on.
You can actually see, as he's slowing down, you can see how hard the snow is coming down now in the lights.
If you could just sort of run it from this point to about the 4-minute mark. And then I'd ask you to
We're about, what, 3 minutes in?
Right there.
You can see the headlight moving. It is dark. But you can, with the spotlight illuminated, you can really see the snow, how much it's coming down.
right there.
You can see a car with the
Officer Saraf, this is you were testifying
with the
earlier as
trunk
far as
open,
the vehicle in front of you that you observed first, and then sort of the parties off to your left as far as the 3 females waving and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground, correct?
whose car
That
is
is correct.
And if you could, just using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to number 1, where the vehicle is that you observed in front of you.
To everybody in the
and
chat
number
saying
2,
wicked
where
dark. Thank you.
observed,
I appreciate
the
it.
3 females and Mr. O'Keefe on the ground.
So here's the vehicle right there, and the females are right there.
Really? Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you wouldn't mind just running this.
I mean, I'm going to take your word for it.
About 7.5.
Chad, I know some of you know whose car it is. The prosecution hasn't cleared it up. But you can see that the doors were just left open as they piled out of that car. At the parked car. I didn't do that great. I'll get better. But this is the car dash cam, so the car's not pointed into the yard. I'm surprised he actually didn't. I mean, maybe it would have blocked the road too much. Didn't point the headlights at where they were. This is not the defendant's vehicle. So for those of you looking for a broken taillight, this is not the defendant's Lexus SUV. The state didn't do a great job in the opening about clearing up who drove back to the house, but is that a snowplow going by in the distance? That's more law enforcement coming down the road from the other direction. I imagine that's the defendant that you can hear. Nobody has gloves on, is the first thing I noticed. I believe that looks like that was the defendant going across the front of the car and back. I will say though, she clearly has like snow on her pants and stuff. She was, I mean, they said she was doing CPR. She was more involved in this scene than, you know, Alec Murdaugh was in his case. Yeah, she absolutely sounds like she is in distress. Guess we're just, wait a second. Down in the corner, it says this video is an hour long. Are we rolling? Like, for the whole hour? Okay. I'm very,
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
very curious why nobody came out of the house. Like, the defense making that point in opening is all I can think about right now. I'm like, you've got a cop inside the house and multiple
I have no further
Cop cars
questions
with-
to this witness, Your Honor.
blue lights.
All right. Will there be a cross-exam? Because this may be a good time to stop if there is.
There will be a cross-examination.
Okay. So jurors,
3
we're
o'clock.
going to stop for the
Because we're
day.
stopped for the day.
I have to caution you, those same 3 cautions. Please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent
Oh, it's 4 p.m.
research or
there.
investigation into this case. If you happen to see,
Well, it
hear,
feels like a
or read
relatively short
anything about
court day.
this case, please disregard it and let us know. And just to remind you, tomorrow will be a half day. We'll go from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock with a mid-morning break. So thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
So tomorrow,
Jurors, close your notebooks and leave them on your chairs.
tomorrow court is running from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. They are doing half days on Tuesday, Thursday, full days Monday, Wednesday, no court Friday. And they ended full court, they ended at 4. So that's not a super long day, considering some of the days in Murdaugh and others went till like
All right. Could I see counsel at sidebar for a moment, please?
4 or 5. I'm going to leave the court feed open just to see if anything else happens, and then we will answer questions. And now that we're not looking at the fan, the jury has left, I presume, at this point. So we excused the jury. No, don't cut the feed. There's more to happen. Hold on. I'm bumping things by accident. Hold on. Let me figure out what's going on with this feed real quick. Did they just, I hope they didn't just end it. Did we just catch up to real time? Nope. Did they end the feed? All right. Nope. I don't know what happened. I think it caught up to real time, and that's where it got all squirrely with me. No. Still squirrely. I think they ended the feed when they went to sidebar. Yep. All right. Let me see if there's any other feeds that are still up and rolling real quick. Nope. Not that one. Nope. That's not court. All right. Give me one moment. Chad, I'm sure you're going to tell me, but I am looking at the screen to see, because I'm actually curious as to what happens at sidebar and if the court has anything else to say. So we're going to switch feeds real quick and leave the audio open just to see what happens. All right. So with that, we're going to leave this feed open and see if anything else happens. I'm going to answer questions. So you guys can plan. This seems like how we're going to be running roughly 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday and Wednesday with an hour for lunch, and then roughly 9 to 1 Tuesday, Thursday. So that's what we're doing. And then no court on Fridays, or no jury. I should say no jury on Friday. So they will be doing motions, evidence, and things they need to handle. They've moved through 3 witnesses today. Of course, they're going to have cross-examination for law enforcement, but they've gotten through 3 witnesses in opening today. That's helpful. I'm going to answer questions real quick as we wait and see if anything else is said by the court at the end of day 1 of evidence here. And they went back to the fan. The defense attorneys were talking to the defendant briefly as the camera panned away from looking at the defense counsel talking to their client. The times, local court time is Eastern. So yes, roughly 9 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. So it was a fairly quick, it felt like a fairly, well, there were points, but it felt like a fairly quick court day to me. Matt Bond, good to see you. Friend, oh, the Kardashian cam at 6 a.m. Leave me alone. It is early for you, and that's fair. The Kardashian cam was, it was a little bit hard to see. Juliana, I'm so sorry. Juliana said, blame myself when my dad died for not calling. I don't interpret her saying it's my fault, given how frantic she seems, to necessarily equate, and the parties are going to have to argue it. I don't think it cleanly equates to I caused this versus I dropped him off here. So I don't think it cleanly equates one way or the other. Oh, we're on Eastern Daylight Time. Sorry, EDT. Thank you, chat. I call this a great day to put the skis on the car. Those were snowy roads. Dragana Freya said, trying to prove she did not hit his car because no evidence was found while they were all cleaning the snow. With regard to the snowplow and the cleaning videos and the videos from the Ring camera, maybe look, hey, the Ring camera, I wonder if this feed just ended too. Hey, the Ring camera didn't pick up them seeing anything from earlier in the day. They used the snowplow, and with the snowplow, they didn't see any pieces of the broken taillight or anything like that. And it looks like this video has ended as well. So I think all the feeds are done for the day, or at least that one looks like it's done for the day. I'm going to leave it for a minute and see. Anthony said, June, how long is this trial supposed to be? The court gave the jury an estimate of 6 to 8 weeks, but they are only running 3 days a week. So that. Jen in the chat mentioned, Emily, the camera was from John's house. Yes, the Ring camera was from John's house, but the defense stated in opening today that Karen hit John's car and broke her taillight at John's house when she was leaving to go out and look for him. The defense said in opening today that when she was leaving his driveway, when he didn't come home after 4 a.m., that she bumps into his car, breaks her taillight and then realizes it's too much to be out driving, goes back to the house, parks the car, and then goes with Jen McEwen. So the Ring camera being relevant to whether her taillight was broken at John's house or whether the taillight was broken at the scene where he was found is going to be very relevant to it. So yes, and also yes, it's going to matter. Let's see. So 6 to 8 weeks, that's so, yes, it's very long. It's very long. Cleopatra said, is it safe to say that we live in Massachusetts now? I mean, we're going to be here for a minute. We're going to be in Massachusetts for a minute, but we also have May 15th, we've got a prelim coming up in the Corey Richens case. We have hearings coming up in other cases. So I might use some of those half days to cover other things. So Sarah said there is Ring footage of her hitting his car. There's Ring footage. I think there is dispute as to what the Ring footage shows. I haven't seen it yet. So we'll see what happens. Lyndon said, if the chat is Bay, then the mods are our bailiffs. I think that's exactly right, especially when we are in trial. So for those of you that are new law nerds, don't forget to do the subscribey things if you want to stay in the loop with when I am going live and what else I'm covering and updates on the other cases we're covering. The Law Nerd app is the place to do it. I was going to pull that up. It says lawnerdapp.com. Where is it? The Law Nerd app is the place to do it because that's where I can keep you in the loop. It is free, iOS, Android. I will keep you in the loop on all of the things that are happening. There's a lot. Casey Cat said she could have damaged the taillight, but the pieces didn't start to fall off till she hit a bump. True. We'll see. Caught up in real time. The pictures are not ideal. They are not ideal, but we'll see. What I have to wonder is if those were stills taken from like the dash cam cameras And that's why the quality is so bad. And if that's true, why no crime scene investigation? Why no CSI photos? So if those are stills grabbed from the courthouse footage, or not the courthouse footage, the dash cam, I've got some more questions, but we'll see. Day one and the goat is screaming already. Yes. This prosecutor must have attended the Elaine Bredehoff School of Questioning. I hate it so much. Jules said, question, did the defendant question to his mid-body not hit, maybe bent over? Oh, the victim not having any injury to his mid-body or torso. The crime scene reconstructionists are going to fight over that. There is going to be quite a lot of dispute over the victim's injuries and whether or not a vehicle caused his injuries. Runkle said getting Elaine flashbacks from the prosecutor. Yeah. What, if anything, is not a cure-all? Just ask the question. What, if anything, could you say besides what, if anything? You could just ask the question. You know, officer, in the hour and a half you were at the scene, did the weather change? Yes. How? Describe. And then move on and proceed. You just ask the question. But what, if anything, then leading into compound question, bad questions elicit bad answers. Victor Mann said defense said cracked taillight, which is fair. Well, I think the defense's theory of the case is that the taillight was not all the way broken until law enforcement broke it themselves, I think is what they are, or at least insinuating. Tyrone said, I just caught up on opening statements. How can there be such a huge difference in quality between statements? Is that disparity incompetence, nerves, lack of belief in the case? I don't know. I don't know these lawyers. This is the first time I'm seeing any of these lawyers other than defense attorney Alan Jackson in trial. I don't know. Lawyers will vary. Your mileage may vary. There are people who are like, you know, if you lawyers will vary. That is all I'm saying. Susan said gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. I'm trying so hard not to throw shade. I will just say that even when I was a DA, I would go and watch some of my colleagues in trial. And there were some times where I would go into a trial of a colleague and be like, I want to rip my own eyes out. I can't sit here any longer and watch this lawyer. Oh, please stop. And then some of my colleagues, I was like, I want to grow up and be you. Can I be you? You are incredible. I am in love. Dr. B, I am sorry, but I am in love. Judge Abby is one of those people when I would go watch her in trial. I'm like, I am obsessed with you. You are the greatest trial attorney. So some of my colleagues, I would go in and just be like, I want to be here all day, every day. And some of them I would be like, get me the fuck out of here. How are they? Go to the appellate division immediately. Like, just go work on appeals. Go work on appeals. Stop talking to juries. Just stop talking to juries. Trial lawyers vary. So did I say anything? Here's the thing. Did I say anything? No. My opinion, I did not offer unless I was asked. They weren't bad lawyers. They just weren't great trial lawyers. Not everybody is cut out for trial. Some lawyers are incredible and not incredible trial lawyers. And that there are a varying wide range of skill sets in all professions, right? Some people are just not made for trials, which is fair. Glass trial isn't all. Not gonna lie, Glad trial isn't all week, said Whippet, and some half days so I can break up the watches with their creators that are fun, mind clearing things. Yes, absolutely. Same. I'm glad it's not every day, so we have time to keep doing anything. So let's see. I saw another, let's see. Did you imitate those you liked their work style? Oh, there were definitely things I borrowed from my friends when I saw people that I love. I was like, oh, I really like the way they did that questioning. I really like the way they style their cross-examination. Absolutely. I would borrow inspo from the attorneys that resonated with me, right? Everyone is different. And that's why people are like, how do you pick a jury? I'm like, you pick a jury for you. Like a little bit for your case, but I think you pick a jury for you. because you want a jury that will just listen to you. If what you're trying to get to is the truth of what happened and the jury is your fact finder, you want your jury to be able to listen to you. And you want them, jurors that are not going to be put off by you, jurors that aren't going to think they know more than you. You want jurors that will listen to you and your style and your way. And there are times when you start talking that you can see somebody's face just like stop. And you're like, oh, you don't love me. That's okay. Which is something you learn about being on the internet is too. I am not everybody's cup of tea. Why? Because depending on the day, I am either champagne or whiskey. So no, I'm not going to be your cup of tea unless you're putting that whiskey in a teacup and then cheers to all of us. So it really just depends. But different lawyers have different skills. If you wanted me to do appellate work, I could literally never. I have so much respect for appellate lawyers. I could literally never. My brain could literally never. I want to be in court telling you the story of what happened so that you understand. Appellate, I'm here for the stories. I am not here for the appellate work. I am never going to be the lawyer that remembers like every case we ever covered in law school. I know like 3 of them. I can tell you the facts. Like I can tell you every song lyric from every song I've heard since 1990, whatever. But I can't cite you to the name of the case and the day it came out, which judge, not my gift. Somebody's gift, not my gift. Questions. Allison Ray said, I'm behind, but this snow depth after he was pronounced dead is not deep enough to cover a body. Anyone else thinking the same? That's part of what's going to be discussed. So we will see. Lived in Worcester, Mass, 6 inches of snow, April 1st in the 90s. That's a lot. April snow is the weirdest. It's like, stop it. It's April. Blech. Bethany, good to see you in the chat. Matt Bond said hello. Spiffy legal mumbo jumbo talkie sister from another mister. T-Rex is clapping. Thank you, Matt. Good to see you. The Great Big Geek said, question, if the prosecution has no substance, why bring the case? I don't know. Bet as to how long it takes them to make a point. I don't know. We're going to see. We're going to see. We're going to see. Cumulus Cloud says, is it me or did you also catch the responding officer say that there were 6 inches of snow on the ground and a light dusting on the victim? That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said. A light dusting on the victim. But if the victim had been there since right after midnight, that's a question. However, if you are, and it looks like Karen Reed in the video, and we'll continue to see, but it looks like Karen Reed in the video is panicked. The behavior looks panicked. You could hear the wailing. Looks panicked and was doing CPR on him. Could the dusting of snow on him be because they were clearing off snow? Because they were trying to warm him up? Could that be part of why the dusting of snow on him, because there were already people on scene? It will be interesting to hear from those that arrived on scene at the same time as Karen Reed. Sandy said, tried to get salty watermelon whiskey, but it wasn't available. So I got peanut butter and raspberry jelly. Delish. That sounds amazing. Salty watermelon is, or the one that I like, I don't know if anyone else makes it, is from Old Smoky. Good to see you, Nishay. Appreciate you making this trial fun to watch. I hope to make it informative, and the parts that are dry, we're going to be like, ugh. So I hope to make it informative. Thanks, ADB, for body doubling with me while I work. Kayla, you're welcome. The next 6 weeks, all of you that need a body double at work, I got you. We're going to be so productive. Y'all are going to get your laundry done. You're going to, you're going to sort your mail. You're going to finish your taxes. I know you filed extensions. It's fine. You're going to hydrate. Some of you are going to work out. You're going to go for a walk. I'm just going to be with you all day long. It's going to be great. Moo Boy Moo, Emily and Mods, thank you for all you do. Question, what soundboard do you use? Is it a physical one or just a program? Moo Boy Moo. I have used multiple soundboards. They are all by Rode. I have had the Rodecaster Pro. It is massive. The Rodecaster Pro 2, which has 4 microphone inputs, which is also a bit bigger than I need. The Rodecaster Duo, which has 2 mic inputs, which is just my size. But they also make a Streamer X, which does have the sound pads, but not quite as many. So I use the Rodecaster. Wait, can I spin this around and make it show on my camera? Maybe not. You'll see it in my Instagram stories. Oh, it won't quite reach. You'll see it in my Instagram stories that I posted showing the update to the office setup. I'll post another one today in case they've already timed out. But yes, that is where I have all of my
fun things on the Rodecaster.
It's got the voice changer. Got the sounds. Like we're just running a morning radio show here, folks. It's just, I didn't realize I wanted to be a broadcaster. Didn't know it was my dream. Colleen, I also love Japanese whiskey. There was, I think Japanese whiskey is all I drank at VidCon last year. Just all. And a creator who I very much like ran into me later and was like, "You're the girl that's been drinking whiskey." I'm like, I am the girl that was drinking whiskey. That was me. Because Raka Fraka said, "What, if anything, does this line of questioning remind you of from the Deaf Ear trial?" What, if anything? It's going to kill me. Erica said, "It's Boston, Emily. We have to know about everyone's brother, sister, cousin, twice removed, etc." And this might be fair. This might be regionally specific. It's also a small community that they just want to go over it. I generally don't mind the background information. It's just the exact same information from both witnesses who are married that I don't necessarily need. It was a bit much. Emily, I'm a bit confused if it's okay to zoom in on the defendant based on other cases, but they still seem to do it. Allison, each case has their own media order. I have not seen a media order from this court that says they can't. So every single case has a different media order and a different tolerance of the judge. Celeste asked, "Where did the children go and who stayed with them?" I don't know where the children went immediately after this. I don't know whose custody they're in now. And I'm not going to really look for that info. I don't know. I hope they're with other family. I would imagine that they are with other family, being the brother and sister-in-law that testified, but they didn't ask. Karen Reed is not in custody and has not been in custody. I think was arrested and then bonded out or was released OR early on in this case. So I'm going to do a few more and then I'm going to wrap up. And then I've got to go finish prepping to record the podcast for this week. We're going to be talking about the Britney Spears settlement in the podcast this week. Casey Cat said, in case you missed it, Messy Jessie comment. She said, "BRB, have to read my goldfish story about how irrelevant the last two witnesses were." The thing is, the state does not punctuate the things that matter well. The defense did it very well with their facial expressions, with their cadence. The prosecution did not punctuate the moments that they wanted you to take away, so it all blends together, almost becoming background noise. But there were statements in the testimony with the sister-in-law, Erica, that were going to be and are going to be important, including if the state is going to argue consciousness of guilt, that Karen Reed said to the sister-in-law, he's dead before they even got back out to the scene, said, and that might've just been her fear talking. And what was the other one that stood out to me? I'm probably never going to see you guys again. You would imagine this family seemed close, right? Karen Reed was on the group texts with her boyfriend and his brother and his mom. I mean, she was like in the family group text. I think that's somewhat significant. So to be like, "I'm never going to see you guys again," like, as opposed to, "I'm here. What do you need? You guys have lost your other sister, her husband. The kids have lost a third caregiver." It seemed that Karen Reed was close to the kids, and the fights they had over the kids was that she was, quote unquote, spoiling them. That doesn't seem like somebody who was distant from the victim, John O'Keefe's niece and nephew. It seems like someone who was very close to them. So for them to lose their uncle and then for her to bounce is something that the state, I think, well, I don't know what the state is going to do, but it's something that the state might make much of, because how do you say, "I'm probably never going to see you guys again"? Because it seemed like they were very close. It will be interesting to see what the state makes of that. It might have just been that she was absolutely panicked. So we'll see. Casey Cat said, "Happy birthday to Rob." Rob, if you're still in the chat, happy birthday. People mad about commentary on a commentary stream. I think people wander in because we're at the top of the trial coverage trending on YouTube. So they don't really know what they've wandered into. And they're like, "Wait a second. you're talking. It happens. My favorite part was hearken to these indictments. I mean, hearken to these indictments is right up there with further affiant saith not, which has got to be one of my favorites. Send a package for you, Teen and Dr. B. Thank you, Victor Man. We will get to the P.O. box soon. The lady in black said, why wouldn't they bring the texts about the kissing in rather than just the testimony? They might later. They didn't punctuate that testimony much either. But Carrie Morrissey did this in the Rust case. We got to the closing and I was like, oh, that interesting how you tied that all together. But the puzzle pieces just got dropped. Here's, Ellie, this is not in testimony yet. They did not ask, but on the dash cam, it was at like 6:10 a.m. when they got there. But I think Carrie Morrissey in the Rust trial of Hannah Gutierrez laid out the picture on the box. I always use a puzzle analogy, laid out the picture on the box, because how do you build a puzzle if you don't see the picture on the box? I mean, maybe it's just me because I have no mind's eye and I can't visualize anything, but you have the picture on the box and it helps you figure out how the pieces go together. The prosecution just like threw random puzzle pieces at the jury and was just like, blah. And so they're like, what the, I imagine they're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all of this? And the defense was like, here is the puzzle that we want you to see. So the only cohesive story for the jury right now is the defense story, I think. So the defense narrative of what's happening, the defense theory of the case is what they're going to check the puzzle pieces against, because the state did not give them a picture at all. The picture was, we're going to ask for a murder conviction at the end. Like, okay. But the puzzle pieces aren't getting checked against anything. So I think it's where the defense is going to make a lot of ground with this jury, keeping those questions that all of us had in the back of our mind. And some of the moments of what the fuck, like the defense, I don't know if I have had a what the fuck reaction to a defense opening statement ever like that. Ever. Like no, there were moments of Elaine Bredehoff's opening where I was like, I'm sorry, what? But it wasn't in a good way for the defense. It was in a, ma'am, seriously? This was a what the fuck did you just say? Ooh, what? It's going to be days. Trooper Proctor's testimony and cross-examination is going to probably be days. And if you're like, I might be in and out on this trial, I might pop back and forth, there's other live trials going on, get the app so I can tell you when Trooper Proctor's on the stand, because I am going to message you the second that individual takes a stand. But in prior motions, the prosecution said, well, we don't know if we're calling Trooper Proctor. And the defense is like, well, then we will. Wouldn't that look terrible for the prosecution? Yes. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Music to My Soul said, I literally fell asleep during the Commonwealth's opening, was riveted during the defense opening, and glazed over during the repetitive witness questioning. That's not good for the state. Allison said, thanks for this. Bed rest and my first baby here any day. Congratulations. Congratulations. Get lots of rest. So, Bowles' opening had some what now moments, but he didn't deliver. That's true. That's true. So with all of that, let's do a quick summary and then we're going to wrap up. Members, I will post in your member spaces when I sit. I'm going to need a few minutes, hours before I sit down to record the podcast, but I am going to record that this evening. I'm going to try not to bump up against Runkle's live stream later tonight. So I'm going to try to record 6-ish Central Standard Time. I will put it in the member spaces so you can do a behind the scenes with me on this week's podcast about Britney Spears, the conservatorship finally being over. We're going to do a little bit of a dive into that. Let's wrap up day one of the Karen Read trial. It's like 3:20 my time. I feel like I've got the whole afternoon. It's delightful. We are at the end of day one of evidence of the Karen Read trial. The prosecution called the victim, Officer John O'Keefe's brother and sister-in-law, to the stand to talk about statements made by Karen Read, text messages between Karen Read, to the incident in Aruba where Karen Read texted her, I can't say sister-in-law, they weren't married, but essentially her sister-in-law, her boyfriend's brother's wife. I mean, we're going with the colloquial sister-in-law, to say that she had seen victim O'Keefe kissing someone in Aruba, the sister of a friend that was there. We didn't get much more detail. The prosecution kind of zoomed over it really quickly, but that there was also text indicating, hey, from Karen Reed, the defendant, to the sister-in-law, hey, if John and I ever break up, I hope we stay friends. And another text saying something to the effect of, today's another day. I wish I had never spoken to an O'Keefe after 2004. But also the sister-in-law, Erica's testimony was, they had normal arguments that, people who have dealing with kids and this and this and that have. It was just kind of normal stuff that they would argue over, and nothing more than that. But it seemed that Karen Reed was very close with the family, and then had said to her sister-in-law, I'll probably never see you guys again. And that was kind of her last conversation with her sister-in-law after they left John O'Keefe's home. Karen Reed left John O'Keefe's home the afternoon after he was found dead at the scene. And that's a very interesting tidbit, that they had a phone call on speaker. Karen Reed was in the car with her dad and is like, I'll probably never see you guys again. Very interesting testimony about the conversations with the defendant. They also called the first responding officer on scene. He's still on the stand, just finished his direct examination. We saw some of his dash cam video showing what he called blizzard conditions, showing them arriving at the scene, showing Karen Reed seeming to me to be frantic. You could hear her wailing from the dash cam. That's not body cam. That's from inside the police vehicle. And due to the weather, it seems that the windows were still up on that vehicle. And you could see her moving around in front of the car, seeming to be distraught. The cross-examination of that witness will begin tomorrow morning as we resume for day 2. And with all of that, law nerds, we answered questions. It is time to roll. So I'm going to answer 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to bed. Let's see. I saw Zoe said the defense opening was more impactful, makes me want to know more, which is literally exactly what the defense wants to do. They want you to hold on to those questions. Runkle is laughing in Canadian in the chat. So did they not talk at the funeral? I don't know if she went to the funeral. I don't know when the funeral was. And I don't know. I don't know. And Allie said, I think she was arrested before the funeral. I don't know. But the sister-in-law, Erica, the brother's wife, did say we never spoke again. So they never spoke again. Which is a very interesting thing. Gringa, thank you for the super chat. And this Agata Olga said, question, did you notice the victim's mother mouthed nope together with the defense attorney when he repeated Trooper's SMS during opening? No, I did not, but I will go back and look for it. The defense excoriated the investigating officer during their opening. There were no objections from the state, which means I think those things are going to be founded in the evidence. And that's not good for the state, because when you have a bad investigating officer, it is going to be hugely, bigly, wicked hard to overcome for the jury. It is quite a lot. And the opening really did quite a lot to indicate the unprofessional's not strong enough. Appalling behavior. Again, if everything that we have seen things said in opening that have not come to fruition, if the things said in the defense opening come to fruition, it's going to be real bad for the prosecution. But also, the reason I'm a little less reserved in this than I was like during Murdaugh, Poot was up there being like, we're going to prove to you that he didn't do it, blah, 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 blah. I was like, all right, Poot, let's see it. The reason I have a little less restraint here is because there is a IA investigation that's been mentioned in motions. It's not going to come up to the jury. There's also that federal investigation into this entire case. So those things all taken into consideration, there's a lot there. And if the investigating officer is texting his buddies on the group chat that he was searching through the defendant's phone without a search warrant looking for nudes, where do you even go with prosecuting that case? Like, what the way I'm going to text all of the other prosecutors I know and be like, what do you even fucking do with that? What? Like, fucking what? What? So, we're going to see. Also, apparently, the lead investigator, when the group chat of his high school buddies, I mean, I have a high school chat with my high school buddies, so like I get it, but texted early on in the investigation, like hours into the investigation, to what was going on with the high school buddy group chat on the personal phone. And they said, oh, wow, the homeowner is going to catch a lot of heat. And he texted back, homeowner's a Boston PD officer. Nope. Sir, we all have a whole lot of questions. The jury's not going to know about the investigations. It's something I can't unknow. When I hear the things in the defense opening, oftentimes I would be more skeptical, but no objection. Big statements about the investigating officer. And we know that there's those other investigations. So that's going to be real bad for the prosecution. Also, what the fuck? Like, what? How do you think that's okay? But we're going to see the evidence come in. The questions may get answered. They may not. Things might get worse. But the state has to overcome doubt. And if there is this much doubt in the investigating officer after opening, well, that's going to be really interesting, isn't it? Because I think all of you are like, I have a fuck ton of questions, and I don't know how the state's going to answer them. Commonwealth, I'll get there. I don't know how they're going to answer it. We'll see. But also, they're going to make much of the defendant's statements. But also, there's a real sussy Google search. This case, the summary of this case is there's a lot of questions, and we're at day one. So the Commonwealth's job is to prove it. I'm not sure how they're going to do that at this point, but we're going to see. I don't know their theory of the case. I know the defense theory of the case. The defense theory of the case is that Karen Read is a convenient outsider of a cover-up. What is the state's theory of the case? She hit him with the car? Is there more? Because I got questions. I've got questions. So with all of that, y'all, I'll see you in the morning. Let's get back to court. We'll see if we have questions. We'll get to see our first cross-examination. Looks like that's going to be done by Alan Jackson. Look, I know Alan Jackson is a great trial attorney. It's just hard because the most recent trial I've looked at that he was the defense attorney for was the LA Harvey Weinstein case. And I did not love his arguments in that case. So it'll be interesting to see how we go in this case. I'm curious. All right. Chat. Appreciate all of you. Good to see you. Law Nerds, you're the best. Don't forget to do the YouTube things. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.
You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media. And don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a law nerd.